Chapter 66. Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan for a moment before getting up. Gong Momo knew that unless it was necessary, he did not like people to get close to him. So she did not step forward to help him change his clothes. However, he was able to hug the girl all night. From this point, it could be seen that he treated the girl differently. Li Hongyuan quickly put on his clothes, freshened up, and sat back on the bed. He fixed his gaze on Jingwan, and finally leaned over to kiss her lips. Take good care of her. Only then did he leave. The shadow guards who had been standing guard outside did not dare to have the slightest complaint. Moreover, when they found that their master did not have such a heavy air of hostility, they could not help but be secretly happy. Once again, they hoped that the future Wang Fei would be able to pass through the door earlier. Taking advantage of the night, how he came, how he went back, except for a few people, even the person involved, Jingwan, did not know that the dignified Jin Qinwang had visited the Luofu at night. This visit lasted for nearly 3 shurchen. Li Hongyuan, on the other hand, felt refreshed. Jingwan, on the other hand, was not in a good state. After waking up, she seemed to be in a daze. She did not get up as usual. Instead, she sat on the bed, as if she had nothing to live for. She had been dreaming all night, and it was the kind of dream that she did not have during the most restless period of her previous life. She somewhat irritably pulled at her hair. In the end, what was going on? It was said that what one thinks during the day, one dreams at night. But she absolutely did not have the slightest bit of such thoughts. Then, she belatedly realized that she was wearing clothes, and that the things on the bed had been changed. Especially when Gong Momo just happened to walk to the bedside. Miss, do you want to get up? Jingwan could not help but imagine. How big of a commotion did she make last night, that even the people who were standing guard outside found out. She did not have the face to see people, okay? Mama. Jingwan moved her mouth, but the rest of the words could not come out. Gong Momo was not old, but she was shrewd. How could she not know Jingwan's thoughts? It seems that Miss had a nightmare last night. Newbie just happened to come in, and saw that Miss was sweating. So Newbie wiped Miss and changed the mattress. Jingwan heard this and breathed a sigh of relief. However, she felt that Gong Momo said this to protect her face. She was also very glad that it was not the Yahuan who found out. As for why Gong Momo came in at night, it was not the least bit strange. She almost did not get up at night, and would not ask for water, but Gong Momo treated her like a child, for fear that she would lift the quilt and catch a cold. She did not seem to feel at ease if she did not check to check. Gong Momo, Gong Momo, Momo, Gong Gong Momo. Gong Momo had expected this, so the hot water was quickly carried into the bathroom. Jingwan was sure again that she made a big commotion last night. In fact, Jingwan was not sure whether the Yahuan knew it or not. For the first time, she was like an ostrich, so she did not ask them to serve her, and continued to bother Gong Momo. This was exactly what Gong Momo wanted. After all, if the Yahuan saw the marks on her back, they would be shocked. Even if she could find a way to cover it up, it would be very troublesome. Jingwan nestled comfortably in the water, and gradually forgot the awkwardness from before. In fact, she still had a question in her mind. Why didn't she feel anything when Gong Momo wiped her body and dressed her? Why did she sleep so soundly? Well, it was very embarrassing. And according to the conservative thinking of everyone, even if it was Gong Momo, Jingwan really could not ask. So, she could only stop here and erase it from her mind as soon as possible, even if it felt very real. Especially that pair of eyes that almost drowned her, and that deep and sexy voice. According to the saying in her previous life, her ears were about to get pregnant. However, Jingwan treated it purely as a dream. She was very open-minded, and did not hesitate to forget about it. But Gong Momo, who looked at her back, did not know how angry she was. And according to her understanding of the living hell, if there was a first time, there would be a second time. Maybe in the future, he would often do such a night attack. She could only cover for him, and not let others know that the girl she pampered in the palm of her hand was not protected well, but was sent to the mouth of a hungry wolf as an accomplice. The more she thought about it, the more depressed she felt. She did not pay attention, and hit her a little harder. Jingwan hissed and gasped twice. In fact, it was not too painful. It was just that it came suddenly, so she was particularly sensitive. But the skin was so tender that it hurt when a soft towel rubbed it with a little force. Was it really going to be made of tofu? Gong Momo hurriedly softened her strength. Miss, is it painful? It's okay. I don't know why, but I feel strange. It's my fault. I was distracted and hit you a little harder. If she could see her back, she would not feel strange. After bathing, she took care of her body as usual and applied some medicine. The pain was gone, but the marks would not disappear in a short time. Jingwan cleaned up and began to do morning exercises. Even if she was sweating and had to take a bath again, it did not matter. As a girl of the noble family, she was so capricious. After more than half an hour of morning exercises and bathing, Jingwan regained her vitality. As usual, she ate a bowl of nourishing porridge. When she went to pay respects to her mother, she met her father. It seemed that he was not in good spirits because of a hangover. Later, Concubine Ji, Concubine Ping, and the two Shu sisters came one after another. Needless to say, the elder brother was not young, so he did not have to pay respects every day. Where is Madame Bai? Luo Rongyan did not see her, so he asked casually. In his opinion, even if she was pregnant, she still had to do what she should do. It was just paying respects, and it was not a long journey. How could she be tired? Jingwan glanced at her father. He still did not know about Madame Bai. Therefore, Jingwan respected her father more than enough, but was not close enough. From her own point of view, she naturally hoped that he would not put the concubines in his eyes. However, from the concubine's point of view, he was a complete scum. Moreover, he was not a competent father. She gently pinched Madame Zhang, who was about to speak. If she let her mother say it, she did not know what she would say. Moreover, there were two younger sisters present. How could she say those dirty things so casually? Father, your face does not look good. How about I take my two younger sisters to pay respects to grandmother first? You can go later? Luo Rongyan was not stupid. He knew that there was something going on. He nodded and said, Okay, you go first. Jingwan led Luo Jingyu and Luo Jingwei away. Before leaving, she glanced at Concubine Ji. Concubine Ji nodded imperceptibly, indicating that she understood Jingwan's meaning. Rather than letting Madame Zhang say this, it was better to let Concubine Ji say it. As the saying goes, one must pay attention to the art of speaking. The same matter, different words could lead to different results. Concubine Ji was very clear about her position. Therefore, Jingwan believed that she would say this matter perfectly. If Madame Bai knew her place, Jingwan naturally would not do anything to her. However, as Luer said, she relied on the piece of meat in her belly to abuse her power. Now that something had happened, she could not blame Jingwan for adding insult to injury. In the eyes of Concubine Ji and the others, Jingwan was too soft-hearted. If it were up to them, it would be best to directly cause an accident and let her die suddenly. Just confining her was too easy on her. Compared to Falling Plum House, the main courtyard was more lively. As soon as Jingwan and her sisters arrived, the people from the third branch also arrived. However, compared to before, there was an additional woman. Even if Jingwan did not have any impression of the concubines from the third branch, she immediately understood that this woman was the one that her third uncle had brought back last night. She really did look like a beauty that would make anyone feel pity for her. Logically speaking, ordinary concubines did not have the qualifications to greet old Madame, especially someone like old Madame Luo, who did not like concubines. Madame Lu was not a fool. Even if she pretended to be virtuous and magnanimous, she would not do such a stupid thing. Then there was only one reason. Luo Rongping had her bring a concubine who had been exposed to old Madame Luo. Naturally, she was much better than those concubines who had silently died in the back courtyard, and no one would know. It was clear that this woman had a high position in Luo Rongping's heart. Mother, this is the little sister that third master brought back last night. He treats her like his own flesh and blood. Didn't this daughter-in-law bring her here early in the morning for you to see? Madame Lu said with a smile. However, everyone could see that her smile was forced and her words were filled with grievances. Jingwan sighed in her heart. Her acting skills were amazing. Jingwan would believe that she was burning with anger because Luo Rongping had humiliated her. But she would not believe that she would compromise. Her purpose was nothing more than to gain sympathy in front of old Madame Luo. As long as old Madame Luo stood on her side and supported her, then no matter how much Luo Rongping doted on this woman, she would not be able to cause any trouble. This little sister is not only beautiful, but her name is also good. She is called https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652947. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 67. As a concubine, without the permission of the mistress, she dared to speak casually, let alone interrupt her. Mrs. Lu should have reprimanded her for being so unruly, but she didn't. Instead, she showed a look of fear. Nyang, after all, my younger sister just got married. She doesn't understand many rules. Please forgive her. If these words were said by Madame Zhang, other people would only think that she was hopeless. But since it was Madame Lu, the way everyone looked at her was a bit strange. Was it because she felt threatened, or Jingwan's attention was not on Mrs. Lu? In her opinion, no matter what Mrs. Lu's reaction was, it was normal. But this woman who called herself Huan Yang, looking at her posture, she was not a person who didn't understand etiquette. But she did such a rude thing. It could only be said that what Mrs. Lu wanted to say might be more unfavorable to her. As the saying goes, choose the lesser of two evils. However, Mrs. Lu only wanted to say her name. The harm caused by a name was nothing more than offending and taboo. Jingwan's first thought was that her name might offend her grandmother. As for the name Huan Yang, it was most likely changed for some reason after Mrs. Lu saw her last night. And Mrs. Lu didn't say Huan Yang's original name. Her purpose was to create trouble for Huan Yang. Since it had nothing to do with her, Jingwan looked away after a few glances. She glanced at Luo Jingying, who looked a little dispirited, and Luo Jingxiang, who was much more beautiful than usual. Luo Jingying was probably scolded harshly, while Luo Jingxiang was about to break free. She didn't want to continue living in Luo Jingying's shadow, and was gradually blooming her own brilliance. Jingwan didn't know that after she looked away, Huan Yang was quietly sizing her up. Among the younger generation, old Madam doted on her the most. That kind of bearing and self-restraint, as well as the indifference from inside out, could only be cultivated by being carefree and following one's heart. It was really enviable. However, if she wanted to establish a foothold in this backyard, it was true that she couldn't offend her. However, it was not a bad method to occasionally use her hand to restrain Lu Shi. After all, people with discerning eyes could see that old Madam didn't like Lu Shi. If she used her hand to plot against Lu Shi, no matter what the result was, Lu Shi would suffer. However, she must be careful when doing things. If people knew that she was the one behind it, her end would be much worse than Mrs. Lu's. Jingwan didn't know that in this short period of time, someone had ideas about her. But even if she knew, it didn't matter. She would deal with whatever came her way. Even if those powerful people were given some time to plan carefully, even if she couldn't trample them into the mud, she could make them fall. And it would be easier to deal with the ghosts in this house. You are the third branch. As the mistress, you should take care of yourself. You don't need me to forgive you. Nyang is right. Mrs. Lu felt wronged. She looked at Madame Luo's eyes, as if she was bullied by a concubine. Not only did she not get her mother-in-law's help, but her mother-in-law also bullied her. Even Jingwan was a little shocked by her mother's pitiful appearance. As the Lu matriarch's daughter, Luo Jingying was shocked speechless by her mother's appearance, not to mention the others. This style changed too quickly and too strangely. If Mrs. Lu hadn't been in front of everyone's eyes, they would have thought that she was a different person. However, looking at Madame Luo's originally indifferent face, it gradually sank, and had a tendency to become colder and colder. The others were affected and became more and more quiet. Only Mrs. Lu was still the same. Just when Jingwan suspected that Mrs. Lu had also been seen through, she found a contradiction. Mrs. Lu's mood did not change with her grandmother's mood. This was not the performance of a bully. Even if her grandmother didn't like her, she didn't pull down her face like now. So Mrs. Lu had really angered her grandmother. Jingwan looked carefully and thought carefully again. She understood that Mrs. Lu had not been seen through. She was still the same person, scheming and scheming. This time, she was angered by Luo Rongping. She was ready to tear off her hypocritical mask and do something desperate. Madame Lu's appearance was actually a threat. If Madame Luo didn't stand on her side, then soon, the people outside would know that she was a punching bag. She was determined to drag the reputation of the Luo family down with her. Madame Luo sneered. Mrs. Lu, I really misjudged you before. Although Madame Luo was usually kind, after all, she had accumulated power for decades. When her aura was released, Mrs. Lu would definitely not be able to withstand it. Her face could not help but turn pale. Nyang, your daughter-in-law has no choice. In fact, what Madame Luo really cared about was not that Mrs. Lu was unscrupulous, but that she was selfish. For her own interests and face, she could completely abandon her children that she always talked about. If it was really for the good of the two children, why couldn't she endure it? After all, she was the mistress of the house. Even if Lady Huan had the upper hand, public opinion and etiquette would be on her side. As long as she endured it until her daughter got married and her son became an adult, she could let go of all the torment and revenge. But she just couldn't bear the slightest grievance. She didn't want to wait, and she didn't want to endure it. It was pure nonsense to say that she had always been compromising in the Luo family. It was fine if she was domineering in the third branch, but Madame Luo didn't suppress her, let alone torture her, and her sisters-in-law didn't make things difficult for her. It was she who wanted to pretend to be virtuous and magnanimous. Who could she blame? With Madame Luo's temper, even if her daughter-in-law had no children, she would not put people around her son. If you were really jealous and made a big scene, she might even help you stop those concubines from entering the house. If you were willing to pretend, who would take the initiative to speak up? It's not like you have nothing better to do. Speaking of which, she could keep pretending, because her bottom line was not stepped on. But when her bottom line was stepped on, she was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. All the hair on her body stood up and she jumped up high. Lady Lu didn't care about her children, but Madame Luo couldn't not care about the reputation of the Luo family. If it was really spread that she mistreated her son's daughter-in-law, being gossiped about was not a small matter. She was afraid that she would be caught and accused of not being strict with the family. If Luo Shangshu's political enemies also accused him of, "How can you sweep the world if you don't sweep the house?" his official position might be taken away. Madame Luo's eyes fell on Lady Huan. Go back and copy the female commandments 300 times, and then learn to be a concubine. I'm not feeling well, so I don't have to come to pay my respects in the future. It's so noisy that I have a headache. Lady Huan didn't complain or get angry. She was obedient. Many people sighed in their hearts. Sure enough, this person was not easy to deal with. She could force Lady Lu to use extreme methods to find Madame Luo to be her backer. Was this something that an ordinary person could do? Lady Lu was satisfied. Her disgusting image disappeared. This daughter-in-law will go back and talk to her. In the future, she will not disturb you. Madame Luo was the villain. Even if Luo Rongping knew about it at most, he would say a few words to Lady Lu. The punishment of his beloved would still be carried out, unless he dared to disobey Madame Luo. Madame Luo was not happy, so naturally Jingwan was not happy. Originally, she wanted to watch the third branch's drama and add more firewood when needed. But now she changed her mind. Luo Jingying often targeted her, but she didn't care. But if he stretched his claws to the head of the person she cared about, then don't blame her for cutting off his claws. Dismissed. Those who didn't come don't need to come. After Madame Luo finished speaking, she directly got up and went to the back. Jingwan let her two younger sisters go back by themselves. She went to see Madame Luo. Jingwan was worried that something bad would happen to her because of anger. Madame Luo's sullen mood lasted for a while, so she talked to Jingwan about her marriage. Later, I will have someone send a message to your eldest grandaunt, and let her send a message to your third granduncle. I believe that it will be settled in a month or two at most. At that time, the spring examination will be over, and Min Gear can have a double happiness. Grandmother, are you asking me to add happiness to cousin Min? Jingwan said with a smile. Of course, a married daughter is like spilled water. Madame Luo pretended to be serious and said, Grandmother, granddaughter is sad. Jingwan cooperated and showed a pitiful look. The grandmother and granddaughter laughed together. The servants around Madame Luo all breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, before Madame Luo's message could be sent to the Chun family, news came from the other side, saying that their third brother, Chun Jingmin's grandfather, had brought his family to the capital again. When the letter was sent from their side, they also set off. Calculating the time, at most 10 days to half a month, the family would arrive in the capital. Madame Luo was very happy. Not only could she see her brother, whom she hadn't seen for many years, but she could also settle Wan Wan's marriage as soon as possible. It was no wonder that Madame Luo was so anxious, because when it came to Jingwan's marriage, she always felt unsure. If it was not confirmed, her heart would always be in suspense. Although this feeling was strange, Madame Luo had to treat it seriously. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652948. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Mobile version reading website mbicken.com. Chapter 68. Even if more than one life had been lost in the inner residence, in the eyes of those big men, it was just a small matter. If it touched on something that he cared about, he might intervene, and his methods were usually simple and crude. If he was under certain restrictions, he might even tell the truth. If he was the absolute authority in the family, then he would help whoever he favored without any principles. Even if the others were to stomp their feet in anger, they could only swallow their anger. In their eyes, the only important thing was the imperial court. Except for those who really cared about the people in the world, the rest didn't even care about their own jobs. They worked hard to curry favor with this and that, seeking for benefits for themselves and their families. They tried to climb higher and obtain supreme power. They didn't have the ability to expand the territory and seek for the title of Marquis, so they hoped to rise to a higher level by succeeding the emperor. The important thing in the imperial court today was the fire in the flower market yesterday. Because the fire was not put out in time, the whole flower market was almost destroyed, and there were heavy casualties. If it was an accident, the most unlucky was probably the Hidden Fire Army and the city defense team. But it was obvious that this was an arson case, because there were too many corpses in the fire, and it was a serious matter. After the fire was put out, the matter of apprehending the murderer was handed over to the governor, Left Fingy, and Right Fufeng of the capital government. In less than 24 hours, even though the three of them led all the officials of the capital government day and night, they still didn't have a clue at the imperial court meeting. They didn't even know the identity of the dead. The governor's eyes were bloodshot. He knelt in the main hall and was scolded by Emperor Liqingdi. The governor was also helpless. The corpses were so badly burned that even the coroner couldn't see much. He didn't know whether they were burned to death or thrown into the fire after death. There were no other clues at the scene. It seemed that someone had erased the corpses. Everything pointed to the fact that someone had done it, but there was no evidence. The more it was like this, the more complicated the matter became. However, in fact, many people in the main hall actually knew the truth of the matter. But because there was no evidence, they all kept their mouths shut. Perhaps in their hearts, they had already cursed the other party's ancestors hundreds of times. That's right, the third prince, Prince Rue, believed it was the first prince, Prince Kong, and Prince Kong believed it was Prince Rue. And as a pawn, the pitiful worm, the fourth prince, Prince Gong, also believed it was one of these two, or maybe they were temporarily working together to trick him. In his heart he couldn't wait to skin these two people alive. The forces in his hands were relatively weak. This time the loss, for him, was not small. In addition to these three people, the second prince died early. The fifth prince was sick and almost didn't go out. The sixth prince, Li Hongyuan, was a master who didn't care about anything. Out of 10 morning court sessions, it was already good if he could attend 1 or 2 times. Now he wasn't here. The other princes who had reached the age of 16 stood in their respective positions. Whether they were secretly relying on a powerful brother, or had their own ambitions, whether they knew the inside story of this matter or not, they didn't intend to get involved. After all, if they were careless, they could get into trouble. Being pushed out as a scapegoat was light, but losing their little lives was not worth it. The people of each faction naturally weren't idle. Even if they had nothing to do with this matter, they would fabricate it. Otherwise, even if it was a trivial matter, they would use it to attack each other, digging holes for each other. If they weren't loyal to the same master on the surface, and in the dark, they would do their best to make enemies. After all, the ones who suffered were only the masters on the surface. Because there were few wars, the military officials were weaker than the civil officials. However, they were a group of rough old men. Among them, Qin Tianming was the first to stand out. If there was a disagreement, he would directly use his fists. Even if he was once beaten by Lu Qingde, he didn't repent. Lu Qingde was annoyed by the quarrel. He didn't handle the business properly, and the more he talked, the more he deviated. Enough! The court, which was originally like a market, quieted down in an instant. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, together with the capital magistrate, investigate this matter together. The time limit is 3 days. If you can't give me a satisfactory result, all related personnel will be fined 3 years of salary. If there is anyone who slacks off or doesn't do his best, he will be demoted by 1 rank and go back to reflect on his mistakes for 3 months. The court session is dismissed. Lu Qingde said with a cold face and directly left. Farewell, Your Majesty. Those who didn't care about the matter cupped their hands to their colleagues and leisurely left Fengtian Hall. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and the capital magistrate had a headache. What was this all about? The most innocent was Diwu Taiqing. As the Chancellor of the Supreme Court, he happened to be at the scene yesterday. Coincidentally, he was also neutral. No matter who the master behind the Minister of Justice and the capital magistrate were, he felt no pressure to find him. In a word, Lord Diwu, even if you didn't say anything at the scene, your investigation ability is also first class. Capable people do more work. If you need anything, just say the word. Not to mention the capital magistrate, who was a 4th-rank official, was originally lower than the Chancellor of the Supreme Court. There was nothing wrong with his flattery. However, as the Minister of Justice, you have the nerve to say such things. Diwu Taiqing looked at him coldly. Unfortunately, the other party was extremely thick-skinned and didn't feel ashamed at all. His whole face was written with "Thank you for your trouble." Diwu Taiqing snorted coldly. It was true that he was a hard nut to crack, but he wasn't the kind of person who liked to take on everything. He knew that if this matter wasn't handled well, it wouldn't be as simple as losing his salary or being demoted. If the princes were really fighting behind his back, he might lose his life. Who would be so stupid as to take on this matter alone? Let's do our own things today. We'll gather tomorrow. It's best if it's handled well, but if it's not, we'll continue to investigate. If it's fine, everyone's fine. If there's a problem, we'll shoulder it together. Bypassing the two, he quickly caught up with Luo Peishan. Although Luo Peishan was only in the Ministry of Rights, Diwu Taiqing never underestimated his ability. He was also at the scene yesterday. If he asked him, he might be able to get more pertinent advice. When the two came to a place, Luo Peishan knew what Diwu Taiqing wanted to do. He waved his hand and stopped Diwu Taiqing from saying anything. He only said to Diwu Taiqing meaningfully, "His Majesty wants a satisfactory result." Diwu Taiqing was startled. A satisfactory result might not necessarily be the truth of the matter. Diwu Taiching's face sank. Most likely, he couldn't give His Majesty what he wanted. So he only needed to follow his own way of doing things and investigate the matter. It didn't matter whether he could get the result or not. In any case, for him, it was just going through the motions. His Majesty wouldn't pay attention to him. On the contrary, he was afraid that he would do something he didn't want to see. Royal brothers fighting, disregarding human life, that was a big scandal. So at most, he would have the opportunity to lose his salary for 3 years. Thinking clearly, Diwu Taiching didn't worry anymore and went back to do what he needed to do. The Gong Prince stopped his 2 elder brothers and said with a fake smile, "2 imperial brothers, this younger brother admires you more and more." Prince Kong and Prince Rui naturally knew what he was talking about. After all, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The Gong Prince was the unlucky cicada from the beginning. Obviously, he didn't know who was behind him. In a flash, Prince Kong and Prince Rui both thought of putting the blame on each other. Teaming up with their 4th brother, taking down the enemy, then taking down their 4th brother would be much easier. They really recognized each other as their opponents, while their 4th brother was just playing a role of balance and easing the tension between them. Prince Kang's idea was particularly prominent. After all, Prince Rui was afraid of the Gong Prince's backer, Left Governor Qin Tianming. But Prince Kong knew that the Left Governor was loyal to him. This 4th brother was just a clown, not worth mentioning. Regarding this, Prince Kong was extremely proud. Who would have thought that he himself was also a clown being played around? 4th brother. Prince Kong and Prince Rui opened their mouths almost at the same time. Then they looked at each other at the same time. It must be said that they were old rivals since childhood. Sometimes, even if they didn't completely understand each other's thoughts, they still had a 70 to 80% understanding. They didn't need to say much to know each other's intentions. Very good. Now that they couldn't say anything, they could only solve it in private. Let's see who has the ability to pull their 4th brother to their side. One smiled wanton and brash, the other smiled reserved and refined. The Gong Prince was so angry that his liver hurt. These 2 people completely ignored him, completely didn't put him in their eyes. They had a tacit understanding that made him hate that he couldn't directly tear them apart. Belittling him, looking down on him? Based on what? Which part of him was worse than them? Just wait and see. One day, he would ruthlessly trample them under his feet and watch them wag their tails and beg for mercy. Listen to 4th brother's words. 4th brother's ability has always been highly praised by Imperial Father. Speaking of admiration, it's 3rd brother who admires you. Your 3rd sister-in-law has been complaining recently that she didn't have time to get close to 4th sister-in-law. 3rd brother heard that the 2 of them were as close as one person before they got married. Tonight, 3rd brother will have your 3rd sister-in-law prepare some wine. You can take 4th sister-in-law to 3rd brother's house to sit. 3rd brother still has things to do here, so I'll take my leave first. Prince Rui patted the Gong Prince's shoulder, nodded to Prince Kong, turned and left, as if he wasn't worried that Prince Kong would take this opportunity to pull the Gong Prince to his side. The Gong Prince's biggest reliance was the Yu family, so he naturally paid special attention to his princess. The Gongqin princess could be said to be the happiest among the many princesses and Junwang consorts. Her husband doted on her, and even if there were concubines and concubines in the Gong Palace, they were the least compared to the other princesses, and they didn't pose a threat to her at all. She also had her father's protection. Imperial concubine Qin Shu was her aunt, and her proper mother-in-law treated her like her own daughter. She really didn't have the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. Even if there were sisters-in-law who laughed at her, her life was nothing more than a mirage. She just thought they were jealous of her. The Gong Prince's face was somewhat ugly. He could refuse other invitations, but not this one. Without waiting for Prince Kong to speak, eldest brother, younger brother will also take his leave first. The other princes walked around Prince Kong, afraid of being implicated and becoming the target of his anger. Considering his current position, Prince Kong held back his anger. If it was any other time, he could have invited Old Four in the same way. And if the other side didn't agree, he could have said agree to Old Third. Not eldest brother. Are you looking down on me? Your eldest brother. Unfortunately, he just lost his princess, and now was not the time for a banquet. So he could only find another opportunity, and he had to be quick. If he delayed until the evening, it would be troublesome. Li Hongming, that person, even if he couldn't make Old Four join forces with him, he would still arouse Old Four's hatred towards him. After all, the left governor was Old Four's father-in-law. Even if he didn't care about him, the left governor would have scruples about his daughter. If Old Four really made things difficult for him, it would cause a lot of trouble. Thinking about it, Prince Kong still prepared to go find his imperial mother. Li Hongming could start with the Gongqin princess, so if his imperial mother wanted to summon her, it would be equally justified. Not long after the Gong prince left, he ran into his father-in-law Qin Tianming. Greetings to Prince. Quickly dispense with the formalities. We're all family. Father-in-law doesn't need to be so polite. Etiquette can't be abolished. Besides, we haven't left the palace yet. Naturally, we can't give Prince something to talk about. Regarding Qin Tianming's attitude, the Gong prince was very pleased. Even if he relied on him, he was still a prince. As a subject, he naturally had to be respectful. This way, when he ascended the throne in the future, even if he didn't let him take power, at least he would let the Qin family enjoy wealth and glory. And his princess consort, even if she didn't hold the phoenix seal, he would let her sit on the empress seat. It must be said that the Gong prince was still too inexperienced in Qin Tianming's eyes. What kind of mentality he had? Qin Tianming was actually very clear, and he wasn't of the same mind as the champion constabulary. In addition to family reasons, the fourth prince wasn't worthy of his assistance. With Qin Tianming as a pearl, who would look at other fish eyes. Of course, those with great ambition who wanted to hold power hoped that the master was weak and the subject was strong. At the very least, they couldn't let the person on the throne have the final say. Naturally, the one they didn't want the most was Qin Tianming, a powerful, unyielding ruler. Qin Tianming was very clear. Unless it was really necessary, this son-in-law of his wouldn't discuss anything with him. He secretly raised his own advisors, and right now he was probably busy going back to find them. He said something that seemed very boring, but actually had a deep meaning. As long as this son-in-law of his wasn't stupid, he should understand what he meant. The Gong prince looked at his father-in-law's back as he left, slightly narrowing his eyes. Both sides were perfunctory. Both sides wanted benefits. It really was a very good idea. Prince, something happened in the imperial garden. A dressed eunuch hurriedly rushed to the Gong prince's side. Obviously, he was one of the Gong prince's people in the palace. What could happen in the imperial garden? The Gong prince said disapprovingly. The eunuch approached him and whispered a few words in his ear. The Gong prince's face became somewhat subtle. Is this true? How could this servant dare deceive Prince? The matter is very big. The other princes, imperial concubines, and the various princesses have all gone over. The Gong prince smiled meaningfully. Should I say, as expected of old Six, there really isn't anything he doesn't dare to do. Although he said that, the meaning behind his words was very sarcastic. Let's go. We'll also go take a look. I want to see if Father Emperor will still cover for him this time. They had a lot of complaints about Father Emperor's indulgence of old Six. Prince, wouldn't that be bad? After all, this matter is related to His Majesty's face. The Gong prince's attendant said. What are you afraid of? So many people have gone. The so-called law can't punish the majority. Can Father Emperor punish us all? When the Gong prince arrived, the imperial garden was really crowded, but other than the center of the incident, the rest of the people were very quiet. But although it was quiet, they all had different expressions. Some were disdainful, some were gloating, some were watching with cold eyes. Of course, there were a few people who looked particularly worried, as if they were disappointed in him. But they couldn't ignore him. Li Hongyuan faced the furious Lu Qingdi, even more indifferent than when he angered Lu Qingdi in the past, his head slightly bowed, his hand playing with a piece of warm jade. His old man's roar was even louder than the wind blowing past his ears, because he was already distracted, thinking about what happened last night. There was a group of people kneeling next to him, and the woman in the lead was wearing a palace dress, beautiful and moving, but at this time she was crying pitifully. Evil creature, are you listening to Jin? Lu Qingdi was angry and kicked him. Who was Li Hongyuan? Even if he was distracted, it was just a subconscious reaction, and he easily dodged. You still dare to dodge? Li Hongyuan took 2 steps forward and continued to kick, but the result was the same. After repeating this several times, Lu Qingdi was tired and panting, but he couldn't even touch the corner of Li Hongyuan's clothes. Sixth brother, how can you be like this? Stop quickly. Perhaps he finally couldn't stand it anymore, Prince Kong shouted, and hurriedly stepped forward, trying to stop Li Hongyuan. With him taking the lead, many people rushed forward, but whether they wanted to stop them and persuade Lu Qingdi, or take advantage of this opportunity to retaliate against Li Hongyuan, only they themselves knew. Li Hongyuan sneered. No matter how many people came forward, and no matter what they wanted to do, he didn't fight back, he just narrowly avoided them, intentionally or unintentionally leading them, including Lu Qingdi, who was inadvertently hit. For a time, the scene was abnormally chaotic, but all of them were of noble status. The guards didn't dare to step forward. If any of them were hurt, they would lose their heads. The most unlucky ones were the group of people kneeling next to them. Because most of them were women, they screamed and hurriedly dodged, messing up their hair, messing up their clothes, and looking very embarrassed. In the end, it was the Empress who came out to calm the scene. What are you waiting for? Pull your masters away, are you all dead? Their personal attendants braved the danger of being beaten, hurriedly hugged their masters, and used all their strength to pull them away. The Empress took this opportunity to walk to Lu Qingdi and whispered, Your Majesty, calm down first. Even if old Sixth did something wrong, you are his father, you can just teach him a lesson. Why do you have to do it yourself? It will be a joke. Imperial concubine Su trembled with anger. What did she mean by just teach him a lesson? It was natural for the father to teach his son a lesson, not to mention the father was the emperor. But the Empress clearly meant to let the guards do it. The emperor was angry and ordered the guards to do it. Naturally, they didn't dare to be merciful, and the consequences were unimaginable. She stepped forward and knelt straight in front of Lu Qingdi. Your Majesty, Yuaner's daily behavior may occasionally be a little out of line, but he won't do such a disgraceful thing. There may be some misunderstanding, Your Majesty. Then she turned back and stared at Li Hongyuan. Why don't you kneel down and explain to your father? Li Hongyuan saw the obvious worry in her eyes, changed his previous indifference, frowned, and walked forward. Mother, get up first. Yuaner, get up first. Li Hongyuan insisted. Imperial concubine Su was helpless. She glanced at Lu Qingdi and saw that he didn't say anything, so she had to get up. Li Hongyuan knelt down unhurriedly. Father, if you're still angry, you can kick me now. Even if you kick me to death, I won't move. This wasn't an admission of fault, nor an explanation. It was clearly adding fuel to the fire. Lu Qingdi subconsciously raised his foot, but he thought of something and restrained himself. But his face was uglier than before, and his back teeth were grinding. You evil creature, you still don't want to admit your fault, do you? Father, didn't I just take liberties with a woman? Do you need to be so angry? I thought you were used to it. Didn't you just take liberties with a woman? She's my woman, your concubine mother. Lu Qingdi roared. It was unknown whether Lu Qingdi was really mad, or he was too lazy to cover up what Li Hongyuan had done. Anyway, those who should know already knew. He had no intention of evacuating the crowd. Instead, he pointed out the core of the matter with one sentence. Since he didn't care, Li Hongyuan didn't care either. She really has the self-awareness of a concubine mother. When she saw me, she should have avoided me automatically instead of coming up to me and saluting me shyly. She obviously wants to cheat on me. If I don't help her, won't I fail to live up to the beauty's grace? Besides, this son only moved his lips and didn't even touch a single finger of hers. In just a few words, she turned around and acted as if this son would do anything to her in public. Lu Qingdi's face turned black. Was it his son who took the initiative to take liberties with his concubine? Or was it his concubine who seduced his son first? These were two completely different natures. The latter was more infuriating than the former. Even if he had been taking good care of himself, he was an old man after all. Whether it was his appearance or his physical strength, he was old. His son was young and strong, and he had a good appearance that few women could refuse. Even if he was the emperor, and could have anything he wanted, sometimes he couldn't help but be jealous. His woman was eyeing his son because he couldn't take it anymore? Extraordinary shame and humiliation. Lu Qingdi was like a ferocious beast on the verge of death. He turned his head and stared at the disheveled concubine. It was as if she had just been caught in the act of adultery. Lu Qingdi's eyes revealed an ominous glint, as if he would pounce on her and bite her to death in the next moment. That woman trembled in fear. Emperor, Emperor, it's not like this, it's not like this. You must believe this concubine, it's Jin Qinhuang. The beauties in Fu Huang's palace are like clouds. The beauties in Urchin's other courtyard are also not few. Taking away their status, in terms of appearance, urchins seem to be better. To Ken, they are just playthings. Who would care about their status? Li Hongyuan indifferently said, and then faintly glanced at that palace concubine. Just this appearance, just this figure, just this vulgar self-restraint. It's not enough for a Ken to take the initiative to take a fancy to her. A Ken is very suspicious, whether or not someone is deliberately framing a Ken. Asking Fu Huang to investigate clearly and make a decision for a Ken. Just look at what he was saying. He still didn't take a fancy to her. Then as her father, he had pampered this woman for several months and promoted her again and again. Wasn't he blind and tasteless? Lu Qingdi's chest rapidly moved up and down, but it was probably because he was angered by Li Hongyuan every few days. Although he was angry, he appeared to be in high spirits and didn't show any problems. Concubine Li will be demoted to the last rank, banished to the cold palace, never to return. Take her away. Emperor, Emperor, don't Emperor. It's not like this, you can't do this to... Woo woo woo. Concubine Li, who was struggling to pounce forward, was caught by the chamberlains. Then her mouth was gagged, so as not to startle His Majesty and be dragged away. And those palace servants who were originally serving her, like quails, shrunk into a ball, afraid that His Majesty would take his anger out on them. They didn't have such a good life to enter the cold palace. The biggest possibility was that they would be directly beaten to death. They wished they could find a hole to burrow into. No one was surprised by Concubine Li's ending, even if the responsibility wasn't on her. With things like this, she couldn't continue to be pampered endlessly. And in these few months, Concubine Li relied on His Majesty's favor to make the other palace concubines look bad. Even when facing the Empress, noble consort Su, and the other most powerful women in the imperial harem, she dared to be perfunctory. The Empress and the others knew that she wouldn't have a good ending, so they didn't pay attention to her. The others were so angry that they stomped their feet. Now that they were suddenly trampled into the mud, they clapped their hands and cheered. But at the same time, they felt inexplicably sad. They all knew what kind of person Lu Qingdi was. It was said that emperors were heartless, and he was very good at this. Only a few people knew that he once had feelings, but with that woman's death, his feelings were buried. Everyone was more concerned about how Lu Qingdi would deal with Li Hongyuan. He was too hateful. Even if they didn't have any conflicts with him, they hated his arrogance and domineering attitude. Naturally, they didn't want him to be well. Your Majesty, even if Concubine Li was in the wrong first, Jin Qinhuang just went with the flow and took liberties with Concubine Li. This is disgraceful and heresy. Normally, there is no reason for a son to take liberties with his father's concubine. That is a breach of virtue, a breach of contract, and should be severely punished by law. One of the palace concubines walked past the Empress and the 4 concubines to take the initiative to speak. What she said was reasonable, but the hatred in her eyes when she looked at Li Hongyuan was too obvious. Su Guifei tilted her head and glanced at her. She knew why this woman hated Yuan'er. When Yuan'er was 7 or 8 years old, he knocked away the male fetus in her belly, causing her body to be damaged and unable to conceive again. She was able to live peacefully until now. Other than the emperor compensating her by promoting her to a concubine position, she herself wasn't a threat. She didn't expect that the person who had been silent all this time would bear a grudge, until now, and still want to take the opportunity to take revenge. Li Hongyuan also raised his head and glanced at that palace concubine. But he didn't have any impression. He had offended and dealt with so many people. Where would he have the mind to remember each and every one of them in his heart? Retracting his gaze, he said, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally, "For a beauty, it's better to be older." The palace concubine who spoke paled and tightened her handkerchief. No matter how much hatred she had in her heart, she didn't dare to speak again. Li Hongyuan wasn't a stingy person. With concubine Li in front of him, what he said now was a full threat. He was a person who wasn't afraid of anything and could do anything. But others couldn't, especially these concubines. If their reputations were tarnished, they would be left in the cold at best, or die suddenly. Moreover, he wasn't a fool. He didn't need to do it himself. It would be too easy for him to find a guard, or even a chamberlain to destroy them. Based on the emperor's infinite indulgence towards him, no matter how severe the punishment was, it wouldn't take his life. As for the people involved, those that could be killed would be killed. Those that couldn't be killed would be strictly ordered by the emperor to keep their mouths shut. Like this, who would dare to fight to the death with this living king of hell? It was said that there were only wrong names, but there were no wrong nicknames. Living king of hell. He really was a living king of hell. Yuan you're still talking nonsense. Shut up. Imperial concubine Su sternly shouted, but her eyes were filled with worry. Li Hongyuan, who had been unconcerned from beginning to end, softened his gaze because of her words. The sharpness around him also lessened a lot. At least he didn't feel as arrogant and unrepentant as before. He also obediently shut his mouth and didn't speak again. Imperial concubine, Su seemed to let out a sigh of relief. Your Majesty, Yuan grew up by this concubine's side. Like Ming, and Min Xiang, he is this concubine's flesh and blood. Regardless of whether they are good or bad, this is a fact that cannot be changed. If they are outstanding, this concubine will naturally be happy. But if they do something wrong, this concubine will also bear half of the responsibility. This concubine will naturally bear half of their punishment. Please be lenient. Lu Chengdi's expression softened. What can I say about you? It's because you blindly indulged him that he became more and more lawless. When he was young, you could be harsh on him. But after he grew up, I haven't seen you say a single harsh word to him. That's different. When I was young, I was more strict and could correct the bad things in their bodies. Now, this concubine can't just watch them suffer. Isn't that cutting this concubine's heart? It's probably because this concubine doesn't know how to teach children. None of the three of them are easy to worry about. Imperial concubine Su said helplessly. My dear concubine, you're wrong. We've seen how you've raised your child. You can't be blamed for his current state. He's naturally irritable and bad-tempered. It's not like we don't know that you've spent more effort on him than third brother and Min Xiang. As for Min Xiang, she occasionally has a small temper. This concubine also likes her. Ordinary families pay attention to pampering their daughters. Not to mention our imperial family's princess. Not to mention Ming. This concubine is very satisfied with him. Ming was mediocre before this mission. Now that your Majesty is satisfied, it's because your Majesty has taught him well. Hearing this, Lu Chengdi was overjoyed. He laughed loudly and didn't look angry at all. Their harmonious appearance made many people secretly grit their teeth. Especially when Lu Chengdi said, this concubine is very satisfied with him. Was it just a casual remark, or did it have other intentions? Your Majesty, then Yuan. With Li Hongyuan's threat, even the Empress was quite afraid. She wasn't afraid that he would do something to her. No matter how presumptuous Li Hongyuan was, he wouldn't be so stupid. She was afraid that he would use other methods to vent his anger on her son, and ruin the marriage between her son and her niece. The Empress didn't dare to underestimate his destructive power. Therefore, she didn't dare to say anything at this time. In your opinion, my beloved concubine, how should we deal with this bastard? Your Majesty, after a few days. Why not let Yuan stay at White Dragon Temple for a few days, abstain from eating mushroom vegetarian food, and let the monks watch over him? It can be considered a small punishment. What does your majesty think? Lu Chengdi's face changed slightly and returned to normal in a flash. As my beloved concubine says. A group of people who were waiting for Li Hongyuan to be unlucky all had black faces. This kind of big mistake was over just like that? Abstaining from eating mushroom vegetarian food for a period of time could also be considered a punishment? What was the difference between this and reflecting on one's mistakes behind closed doors? However, since Lu Chengdi agreed, there was no room for others to interfere. Even if this matter was known to everyone, it couldn't be brought to court. Daring to mention something that made Lu Chengdi lose face. You think you're as bold as Jin Qinhuang? Think you're as forgiving as Jin Qinhuang? Dream on. Li Hongyuan was greedy for beauty and enjoyment. Coming to a Buddhist place, there were all kinds of rules and precepts. This could be considered a severe punishment for him. Those who were unbalanced could only comfort themselves like this. Bastard! Immediately roll to White Dragon Temple. Don't return without an imperial decree. Aken obeys the decree. Not waiting for Lu Chengdi to call him up, he slowly stood up. That appearance made Lu Chengdi want to slap him again. But no matter what, he was indifferent. To put it bluntly, he was a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. In the end, the one who was angry was only himself. What are you still standing here for? Do you all have nothing to do? Get lost for Jean. Such obvious anger. All the people who were watching the play immediately acted as if they had something important to do. One by one, they asked to leave and even voluntarily sealed their mouths. You bastard, you still haven't gotten lost. The one that Chen doesn't want to see the most right now is you. Aken has something to say to Mufei. Fu Huang still has political affairs that haven't been finished, right? The implication was still not leaving. In the end, Lu Chengdi couldn't take it anymore. He ruthlessly gave Li Hongyuan a kick before leaving in a huff. Li Hongyuan looked at the footprint on the corner of his clothes and frowned. It wasn't because of pain, but purely because he found it dirty. Noble consort Su naturally squatted down and used her handkerchief to wipe away the footprint. It was like she had fallen down when she was young and was helped up. Then, she would personally wipe away the dust on her clothes and comfort her with gentle words. Li Hongyuan's expression was slightly strange. He took a step back. Mufei. Noble consort Su stood up straight and looked at him kindly. What's wrong? This kind of thing is done by the palace servants. How could I trouble you to do it personally? Mufei is used to it. If you don't like it, Mufei will pay more attention in the future. It's not that I don't like it. I can just. Li Hongyuan paused, as if he didn't know how to continue. You just love Mufei. Mufei knows. Don't make your Fu Huang angry. Naturally, he won't do anything to you. Then, these things wouldn't have happened. What happened today? Mufei believes that you won't be so willful and rash. Even if concubine Li's behavior was improper first, you wouldn't go near her for no reason. There were so many people just now, but you didn't want to say it. Now can you tell Mufei? Noble consort Su said warmly. Li Hongyuan's face was cold, and he didn't want to speak. Noble consort, Master saw concubine Li being disrespectful to you a few days ago, so shut up. Li Hongyuan coldly interrupted eunuch Mu. Noble consort Su was stunned. Tears quickly welled up in her eyes, and she felt very touched. You're really, Mufei. Li Hongyuan frowned, and his face became colder. However, anyone could see that he didn't know how to comfort noble consort Su. Because he was at a loss, he appeared even colder. Noble consort Su wiped away the tears that didn't fall and smiled happily. Others say that my son is bad. How could they know that my son is the most filial and considerate? But don't do such things that will damage your reputation in the future. Mufei has been in this harem for more than 20 years. Concubine Li is just a little girl who is spoiled and arrogant. Mufei has seen too much of it. Mufei doesn't take her seriously. Mufei knows what your Fu Huang is thinking. He's just greedy for a moment of novelty. It won't last long. Mufei, don't listen to Muan's nonsense. I'm just doing it on a whim. Noble consort Su saw that he didn't admit it, so she didn't say anything else. But her expression clearly said, Mufei knows that Yuan is shy. Yuan, when you go to White Dragon Temple this time, you can stay there peacefully for a while. Although it's a vegetarian fast, the vegetarian dishes in White Dragon Temple are famous for being delicious. Before Mufei entered the palace, she often went out to eat vegetarian dishes. In addition, copy Buddhist scriptures when you have nothing to do. Just treat it as praying for your Fuhuang. Don't cause any trouble. That's a sacred place of Buddhism. If you touch something that you shouldn't touch, I'm afraid your Fuhuang will really be angry. Listen to Mufei this time and be patient for a while, okay? Li Hongyuan paused. Mufei, don't worry. Mufei, I understand. That's good. Noble consort Su knew that as long as it was something he promised her, there was nothing he couldn't do. In that case, I'll take my leave first. I don't know how long it will take for me to come back. Mufei, take care. Don't worry. Your Fuhuang won't let you stay in White Dragon Temple for too long. Noble consort Su said meaningfully. He thought that she would find an opportunity to plead with Li Qingdi. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently. He didn't care about it at all. I'll take my leave. Once Li Hongyuan was far away, the mama by noble consort Su's side said, "This mother and son are truly mother and son. No one can compare to them. No matter how Prince behaves outside, in front of noble consort Su, he is still the same as when he was young. Yes, Yuan is actually very smart. He gave up a lot because of me and Ming noble consort Su whispered. Li Hongming, Prince Rui, stood behind a tree not far away, watching and listening silently. Then he left expressionlessly. Only he knew what he was thinking. As they walked further and further away, the cold aura around Li Hongyuan became stronger and stronger. Eunuch Mu followed behind him, not daring to breathe loudly. Last night, he said that he would go to White Dragon Temple to rest for a while. And today he achieved his goal. It seemed that he had a plan. It was so easy to achieve what he wanted, and it was killing two birds with one stone. He should be happy. But looking at him, his mood was worse than before he went to the Luo family. After thinking about it, Eunuch Mu realized that the problem might be caused by noble consort Su. They all knew that his master was ambitious for the throne, and was determined to get it. So he secretly set up a big trap. Maybe it was because he felt ashamed to face noble consort Su, who raised him up. Or was it that master and noble consort Su were not as close as they seemed on the surface? As for what was going on, master didn't mention it, nor did he express it clearly. No matter how hard Eunuch Mu thought about it, it was useless. However, he didn't need to waste his time to speculate on this matter. Leaving the palace, before Li Hongyuan got on the carriage, he looked at the majestic palace, and thought of noble consort Su's last instructions. The punishment was fake, the praying for blessings was real. As for the object of the praying, naturally, it couldn't be touched by something that shouldn't be touched. That was the taboo in his good imperial father's heart. No matter how much he indulged him, if he stepped on his bottom line, he would incur his thunderous wrath. However, even if he had completely broken all the precepts of the Buddhist sect, you still need to know about it. Returning to Jin Qinhuang Fu, because they were already prepared, they quickly packed up their things, and didn't make a big fuss. After all, a dignified Qinhuang being punished was not a glorious thing. When Gong Mama received the things from the shadow guards, she trembled with anger. It wasn't easy for her to calm down. Turning around, she had no choice but to find her Mississippi miss. The peach blossoms in White Dragon Temple have bloomed. Do you want to go take a look? The peach forest in White Dragon Temple is very large. Every time it blooms, it is especially beautiful. In the entire capital, you can't find a better peach forest. Digression. On the first day it was published, it was updated 10,000 times. Thank you, dear friends, for your support. However, because the author needs to take care of the baby, the little guy who is not even 2 years old is very naughty. He causes trouble all day long, and also doesn't know how to be obedient. Therefore, the time to write is very little. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652949. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Com. Bika Go mobile reading website Mbikin. Com. Chapter 69. Is that so? Then I'll definitely feast my eyes on it. Jingwan was obviously very interested. She thought for a moment and said, I'll invite Sister Jia, Cousin Yuan and Ingshuang. The more the merrier. I'll send them the invitation right away. Jingwan wasn't a person who would drag her feet and act on her words. Granny Gong hoped that she would refuse. If she did, then the King of Hell wouldn't blame them for not doing a good job. Unfortunately, this excuse just happened to poke at the young lady's weak spot. She once again helped the tyrant do evil. She sighed in her heart. Young lady, you're so excited, but you're taking the initiative to walk into the wolf's den, into the tiger's mouth, Jingwan said as she wrote the invitation. When you go and report to grandmother, you might as well ask her if she wants to go together. Grandmother has been away from the capital for so many years. She must miss a lot of places in the capital. You're so filial. With Madame Luo around, it was perfectly justifiable for her to keep the girl by her side. Naturally, she wouldn't easily be left alone. If the King of Hell wanted to make a move, he would have to think twice. Although Mama Gong didn't think that he could be stopped as long as there were more people, she could only comfort herself with this. This has nothing to do with filial piety. I'm just putting myself in grandmother's shoes and thinking about it. I think she would probably be like that. Jingwan finished writing the invitation and brought it directly to the main courtyard. She suggested going to White Dragon Temple to play and burn incense. Madame Luo naturally didn't disagree. She didn't have anything to do for the time being and didn't care much about the peach forest in White Dragon Temple. What she missed more was the vegetarian food in White Dragon Temple. It's been so many years. I'm afraid the cooks have changed long ago. I wonder if the taste is still the same. As the saying goes, take the essence and discard the dregs. Maybe the taste will be better. Jingwan said with a smile. Wanwan is right. Who knows, it might be even better. When are you and your close friends going to meet? Tomorrow. When it comes to flowers and plants, you're always so impatient. Madame Luo pointed at her in the air. Granddaughter only has that little hobby. Jingwan did not feel that there was anything wrong with this at all. If grandmother feels that it is not appropriate, we can delay it. Anyway, the invitation has not been sent out yet. Although she was eager to see the beautiful scenery, it was not impossible to wait for 1 or 2 more days. No need just tomorrow. Madame Luo directly asked the person beside her to send the invitation. Then, Jingwan thought of another question. Grandmother, do you want to ask the other sisters if they want to go together? She didn't think of them in the beginning. Was it not good? Jingwan began to reflect on herself. After all, she was no longer in Qian Prefecture. She was not the only girl who needed to go out from time to time. Moreover, there was no freedom in the capital. There's no need. They've been in the capital for a long time. They've seen what they should see and played what they should play. Maybe they've already been there when the peach blossoms first bloomed. I'll get someone to ask your fourth aunt later. Okay, I'll listen to grandmother. If she could not go with Luo Jingying, Jingwan was naturally more than happy. The invitation that Jingwan sent out quickly received replies. They were all sent back by the person in charge of sending the invitation. They all said that they wanted to go. The fastest belonged to Sun Yijia, who was of the highest status. According to common sense, the invitation sent to Dinggua Manor would only be received the next day. However, Sun Yijia returned home yesterday and told the gatekeeper that if there were people from the Luo Shangshu Manor looking for her or sending her an invitation, he should directly lead them to her place. Therefore, Sun Yijia directly met the servants of the Luo family. After receiving Jingwan's invitation, she was naturally very happy. Not to mention going to White Dragon Temple to admire the flowers. Even if it was to look at the weeds in the suburbs, she would be happy. She immediately replied and said that she would go to the Luo Manor as soon as possible tomorrow. The other 2 families were not so complicated or troublesome. In addition, it was the people of the Luo family. The gatekeepers of the 2 families did not dare to neglect and smoothly met the person. Jingwan had just finalized the trip here. On the other side, Li Hongyuan had almost arrived at White Dragon Temple. What Li Hongyuan did in the flower market could be said to be ruthless, involving more than half of the officials in the capital. On the surface, none of the most powerful princes were able to escape unscathed. Not only that, but it also caused another fierce fight among them, causing them to suspect each other. And as the main culprit, after stirring up the water, not only did he clap his hands and walk away, no one even suspected him. Those who vaguely guessed that it might be his doing did not say a word, no matter how emotional they were in their hearts. They just repeatedly warned themselves that if they followed such a master, even if their room to display their abilities was reduced a lot, and they might even become a person who only needed to do things and not talk, they should not have any disloyalty. Hidden in the woods at the side, Li Hongyuan looked at the magnificent temple that was filled with Buddhist incense. His thoughts drifted. White Dragon Temple was a temple of the imperial family. Except for a few special days, it was also open to the common people. Thus, it was full of incense all year round. In addition, its abbot, Master Liaochen, was one of the most eminent monks in the world. Master Liaochen's fortune-telling was very accurate. However, he could only tell at most 3 trigrams a year, and it had to be a fated person. Otherwise, not even the emperor could make him make an exception. For some people, the so-called fated person was someone that the other party found pleasing to the eye. But Master Liaochen wasn't like that. He didn't care about high or low status. He didn't even need to rely on his eyes to determine whether someone was fated or not. Every year, countless people hoped to become the fated person that Master Liaochen spoke of. Not only did they want to know their own fate, but they also hoped that Master Liaochen could change it. That's right. Rumor had it that Master Liaochen's greatest ability was to defy the heavens and change people's fates. No one knew where this rumor came from, but the world firmly believed it. It wasn't that there weren't any influential people who wanted to force Master Liaochen to change his fate. However, that person died an unnatural death not long after. That person had been criticized by several masters at the same time. Although the road to life was bumpy, it was a sign of longevity. But he hadn't even reached 30 when he died. For a time, those who were itching to make a move kept quiet out of fear. They all treated Master Liaochen with respect. It was good to have him tell their fortunes, or give them a few pointers, but they couldn't and wouldn't force it. However, Master Liaochen had a few rules. It wasn't about the fate of the nation, the near future, or the distant future. The affairs of the nation were easy to understand. The near future referred to things that would happen in a very short time. The world was ever-changing. Things that were close at hand were difficult to change, even if one could predict them. The distant future referred to things that wouldn't happen in 100 years. The distant future was too distant to be divined. It couldn't be divined. Master Liaochen wasn't an elusive person. Although he left the capital from time to time, he wouldn't be completely untraceable. Even if an important person or someone special wanted to see him and listen to the teachings of Buddhism, he wouldn't avoid them because of his status. Li Hongyuan and Master Liaochen could be considered old acquaintances, not only in this life, but in his previous life as well. During his years on the throne, if Master Liaochen hadn't comforted him from time to time, he would have been even more vicious and killed even more people. His reputation as a tyrant would have spread far beyond the imperial court. In this life, when he left the palace at the age of 16, the first thing he did was find Master Liaochen. He didn't say much, only one thing. Can this prince get what he wants? No one knew if Master Liaochen had seen through him. He only said, "Your Highness's obsession is like a demon. Will your Highness give up even if I say no?" "No." The mischievous Li Hongyuan's answer was straightforward. "In that case, what's the point of caring about whether I can or can't? You'll know when the time comes." From then on, Li Hongyuan stopped asking and didn't ask Master Liaochen to tell his fortune. Occasionally, he would come to the master to play chess, drink tea, or discuss the teachings of Buddhism. In fact, Li Hongyuan was well versed in the teachings of Buddhism, but he had always been dismissive of it. He'd even criticized it as worthless in front of Master Liaochen. Master Liaochen would only smile and say nothing. When Li Hongyuan finished, he'd laugh and say, Your Highness understands the teachings of Buddhism, so you can find other ways to refute it. In return, Li Hongyuan snorted coldly. Li Hongyuan only had eunuch Mu with him. After standing there for about 15 minutes, they went directly to the rear courtyard of White Dragon Temple, without attracting any attention. Master Liaochen was already waiting there with a group of people. He was dressed in a monk's robe, and had a benevolent countenance. He had a long white beard, and looked quite old. However, his complexion was ruddy, and his eyes were not as cloudy as an ordinary old man's. Instead, they were as clear as a baby's. It was incredible. However, just by looking at you with those eyes, it seemed to be able to make you calm down quickly. Master Liaochen put his palms together. This poor monk greets your highness. The monks behind him followed suit. Master, there's no need to be so courteous. Li Hongyuan returned the greeting. Compared to when he had left the Li Palace, he was now like a completely different person, a world of difference. The group went directly to Li Hongyuan's small courtyard. They pushed open one of the side rooms. It was clean and simple, filled with a fragrant aroma. Naturally, the incense burning there was the best quality of sandalwood. Li Hongyuan and Master Liaochen sat on opposite sides of a short table. The novice monk quickly served them tea. This was a tea unique to White Dragon Temple. It was grown from a several hundred-year-old tea tree, and only a small amount was produced each year. More importantly, Master Liaochen was in charge of everything from the picking of the tea to the final product. Perhaps because of this, he was tainted with a hint of Buddhist nature. In his previous life, after Li Hongyuan became emperor, he domineeringly took all the tea for himself. Fortunately, Master Liaochen was magnanimous and didn't argue with him. If he wanted it, he would give it to him. Li Hongyuan looked at the faint smoke rising from the cup. The tea had a unique taste. It was bitter than sweet. After swallowing the tea, his mouth would be filled with a sweet fragrance. It was truly memorable. More importantly, it had the effect of calming the mind. Your Highness seems to be in a good mood, said Master Liaochen. Master, you have sharp eyes. Of course I can't hide anything from you, replied Li Hongyuan unconcernedly. Your Highness will get what you want, said Master Liaochen. His words didn't seem stiff at all. Li Hongyuan paused, then raised his head. After 6 years, why are you suddenly bringing this up again? Compared to before, Grandmaster's attitude is poles apart. Your Highness will get what you want. It is the fortune of the world. Master, you're too serious. Your Highness should know that this humble monk's words are not empty. Li Hongyuan had been haunted by his obsession. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, his obsession was gone. His heart was at ease and everything was at peace. If his obsession didn't disappear, the more time passed, the deeper his inner demons would grow. Moreover, he held great power in his hands. Who knew what kind of storms he would stir up? The ones who would suffer would naturally be the innocent. Perhaps he would lose his reason one day. Or perhaps he would let himself do whatever he wanted. It was hard to say whether he wouldn't cause misery and suffering. Although he didn't want a crumbling empire, that was because he wanted to have time to enjoy himself with Jingwan. If Jingwan couldn't get what he wanted, he would naturally have plenty of time. Perhaps the more chaotic the world was, the happier he would be. That way, he would have something to pass the time. Compared to his previous life, this was undoubtedly even worse. Then dare I ask, Master, was this prince able to get what he wanted all along? Or were you prepared to change this prince's fate? 6 years ago, it was still like looking at flowers in the fog. There were many uncertainties, but your Highness' actions opened up a path. So as expected, everything depends on effort. She will come to White Dragon Temple in a few days. Master, you should take a look. Your Highness wants this monk to read the girl's fate. Everything will be done according to Master's rules. This prince won't insist. It's rare for the words won't insist to come from your Highness's mouth. When it comes to her, this prince won't insist. Master, you should know the reason. Master Liaochen nodded. Your Highness's original intentions have never changed. You don't care about other things, good or bad. There was a light knock on the door. Master, the old benefactor at the foot of the mountain requests an audience. It was the crisp voice of a child. Amitba, Master understands. Go and ask the old benefactor to wait for a moment. Then, he He looked at Li Hongyuan with clear and kind eyes. Your Highness, please do as you wish. This poor monk will be back soon. Li Hongyuan glanced at him. You're still the same as before, pretending to be benevolent. You can abandon this prince for a commoner. If you want to leave, then leave. You don't have to come again today. This prince can enjoy some peace and quiet. It sounded like he was angry at Master Liaochen's neglect. After all, his words were no longer respectful. But in reality, Master Liaochen was special to him. So he was relatively lenient. Amipa, it's all because your Highness is benevolent. If your Highness didn't allow it, this monk wouldn't have acted so boldly. Old monk, you've learned how to be glib? Monks don't lie. Li Hongyuan sneered. Don't use the word benevolent on this prince. This prince's heart and lungs are all black. Don't taint it. Master Liaochen was still compassionate. He smiled warmly. This monk is never wrong. Li Hongyuan couldn't be bothered to pay him any more attention. After Master Liaochen left, Li Hongyuan stood up and walked to the window. Eunuch Mu pushed it open first. Because White Dragon Temple was an imperial temple, there were naturally places where ordinary people couldn't enter. This small courtyard was more unique. It was secluded, quiet, and not too far away. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't attract much attention. Li Hongyuan liked this room because he could see the entire peach forest behind the mountain. When he opened the window, the view was unusually wide, and the peach blossoms were truly beautiful. Master, Miss Luo and the others will come to White Dragon Temple tomorrow. Eunuch Mu did his job as a lackey. The competition among eunuchs was fierce. There were only so many masters, and few of them were doing well. There were countless people with cheap lives. No matter who stood out a little, there would always be a large group of eunuchs keeping an eye on you. They weren't there to prevent you from making mistakes, but to expect you to make mistakes. Just like in other places, there were endless schemes and tricks. One careless mistake, and you could be pulled down. Last night, because he didn't guess the real purpose of his master's visit to White Dragon Temple in time, he was almost demoted. Therefore, Eunuch Mu was doubly alert. He had to let his master know that he was irreplaceable, even if his master had a bad temper. And following him was like hanging one's head on one's waist sometimes. It was better than being trampled into the mud by others. Moreover, there were two sides to everything. When his master was in a bad mood, he should think more about his good. Li Hongyuan wasn't surprised. Based on Wan Wan's infatuation, it was already too late for her to wait until tomorrow. Who's coming? Eunuch Mu named the people invited by Jingwan one by one, and then the people of the Luo family who would accompany them. Li Hongyuan's expression was indifferent. No matter how many people came, they could not stop his plan from being carried out. He had been hiding in the dark all this time. Naturally, he was not satisfied. Even if he could not have intimate behavior openly, at least he had to let Wan Wan know him first. When they met as strangers in the bridal chamber, he would waste 1 or 2 years of beautiful time. How stupid would he be to do that? Go and get a jar of 6-year-old peach blossom wine. Yes. Therefore, the rules and precepts of Buddhism were really nothing for Li Hongyuan. Whether he broke or kept the precepts, it was all up to him. Everyone thought that Li Hongyuan enjoyed life and couldn't bear the slightest hardship. However, after he ascended the throne in his previous life, he lost too much because of the fight for the throne. At first, he didn't have any available talents, so he went to war himself. For a period of time, because of the defeat on the battlefield, as the emperor, he lived in the open. Li Hongyuan didn't make a sound. The hardship in the temple was nothing to him. Of course, Li Hongyuan wouldn't go too far. It didn't matter if he drank a little wine and ate a little meat. He wouldn't break the precepts of lust, unless Wan Wan took the initiative to make him break it. However, according to his understanding of Wan Wan, even if they were in love and even got married, she wouldn't agree to mess around here. Just thinking about that scene made him particularly want to have a try. Maybe because of the taboo, Wan Wan would have an unexpected reaction. Li Hongyuan's eyes became somewhat gloomy. He even licked his lips. That appearance was particularly tempting and frightening. Mu Gonggong dug out a jar of wine from under the tree, under the eyes of the monks in the courtyard. The 4 monks were all like wooden pillars, not even lifting their eyelids. When Li Hongyuan was 16 years old, he went to Bailong Temple to get countless peach blossoms to brew wine, and directly buried it in the courtyard. He said that this would make the wine more mellow and delicious. After that, once a year, more than half of the courtyard's underground space was filled with wine. However, no one said anything because it was permitted by the abbot. According to Master Liaochen, Jin Qinhuang's status was noble. There was no need to care about such a small matter. It seemed to show that he was also a layman who would bow his head to the powerful. But when he said this, if his expression wasn't as compassionate as usual, perhaps it would have been a bit believable. Those who knew about it all believed that if it was anyone else, even if it was the emperor, Master Liaochen would have refused. Unfortunately, except for Li Hongyuan, this living king of hell who deviated from the orthodoxy, there was probably no one who would do such a thing. So some people hoped that he couldn't bear the hardship of breaking the precepts, and would be beaten by the upright and plain-spoken monks. Naturally, they were disappointed. Just as he said, if they wanted to find fault with him, they first had to know what he had done. More than one person secretly used tricks to make the eunuchs who went to Bailong Temple to deliver the oral message to hurry up and arrange everything before Li Hongyuan arrived. As a result, there were a lot of monks inside and outside the courtyard, but they were all decorations for some people in the imperial palace to see or to play the role of guards. Eunuch Mu patted the clay to clean the edges of the wine jar and the outside. He took out the wine cup from the secret compartment in the wing room and washed it, ready to pour wine for Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan waved his hand, reached out to pick up the wine jar, and directly raised his head to drink. Part of the wine slid down the sides, down the neck, into the collar and disappeared. Gradually, the color of the clothes darkened. It was obvious that the clothes were soaked and stuck to the skin, even if he wore more than one layer. The lines of his chest and the rolling of his throat could be seen clearly. Eunuch Mu secretly regretted. Fortunately, there were no women here. After finishing the wine jar, Li Hongyuan casually threw it through the window into the courtyard with a bang. Li Hongyuan was still sitting steadily. There was no redness on his face, as if he wasn't drunk at all. He even said, "Muan, have the kitchen cook 2 vegetarian dishes, and quickly send them back to the imperial palace for noble consort Su. As long as I'm in Bailong Temple, I can't rest." Noble consort Su said that she missed the vegetarian dishes in Bailong Temple. So his master sent them back to her? Such filial piety. But his master called her noble consort Su, not mother. Stop. Yes. Li Hongyuan walked to the side of the hard Kong bed and sat down. He slowly closed his eyes and his body went limp. He propped himself up with one hand and laid down flat. His breathing soon became light and long, as if he had already fallen asleep. Eunuch Mu was lucky to taste the peach blossom wine once. It didn't taste strong, and even had the fragrance of peach blossoms, which was more in line with women's preferences. But it was very strong. He drank the whole jar directly without any buffer. Eunuch Mu stepped forward and looked at his wet clothes. He hesitated for a moment and covered him with the thin quilt, but he didn't dare to change his clothes. There was once a similar situation. Before his hand reached out to his master's collar, he was kicked away. That kick almost killed him. Thinking about it now, he still felt the pain. Since then, he didn't dare to act rashly. Fortunately, his master didn't punish him for his poor service after he woke up. "Wan Wan," he murmured. It seemed that he was really drunk. Hearing this, Eunuch Mu quietly retreated and gently cleaned up the spilled wine and the broken wine jars outside. It was really a sin to let those monks clean up and smell the wine. Master had harmed enough people. It was better to let go of these monks who had lived in peace. Master Liaochen finished his work and returned. He stood by the window in the corridor and looked at the sleeping Li Hongyuan. He put his palms together and said, "Amitba. https://www.bikin.com/11/11807/6652950. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book www.bikin.com. Bika Go mobile reading website bikin.com. Chapter 70. Li Hongyuan didn't sleep for too long. He woke up in less than 2 hours, but his body was wet and smelled of alcohol. He didn't feel very good. He quickly took off his clothes. Eunuch Mu, who was very considerate, asked someone to bring in the bathtub at the right time. The temperature of the bathtub was neither too hot nor too cold. It was just right. After cleaning up, it was already an hour later. Naturally, it was already past lunchtime. However, even if the monks in the monastery were strict with themselves and did not eat past lunchtime, who was Li Hongyuan? If anyone was hungry, he would also be hungry. Not to mention missing lunchtime. Even if it was in the middle of the night, they would still think of ways to feed him until he was full. Considering that he was sober and couldn't eat greasy food, they didn't need to waste time to prepare food for him outside. They could directly use the kitchen in the temple. Seeing that they were almost done, Eunuch Mu asked the kitchen to start a fire to cook. When he sat down, the hot vegetarian dishes that looked and smelled good were just on the table. Li Hongyuan had a small bowl of clear soup next to his hand, but it emitted a faint fragrance. What is it? It's the hangover soup specially made for Prince according to the abbot's recipe, said the gray-robed monk who delivered the food. Should I say that he's worthy of being called Master Liaochen? He even knows about this kind of thing, said Li Hongyuan sarcastically. The monk didn't refute. After setting the food, he bowed and left. Li Hongyuan naturally ate a lot of vegetarian dishes in White Dragon Temple. In fact, compared to meat dishes, he preferred light dishes. Now these dishes were just to his taste. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Li Hongyuan went to the back mountain peach forest to digest the food. Eunuch Mu stood far away from the peach forest. At this time, he was naturally an idiot who didn't know what to do. However, these exceptionally beautiful peach blossoms would probably be destroyed after Miss Luo left. Previously, he had been wondering if his master was not preparing to make peach blossom wine this year. Only after these 2 days did he realize that his master had probably planned to let Miss Luo have a good time before picking flowers to make the wine, when he found out that Miss Luo had entered the capital. Li Hongyuan plucked a peach blossom and pulled at the petals in boredom. However, for a man with impeccable looks like him, doing this kind of thing was also pleasing to the eye. After all, under another peach tree not far away, there was someone who was mesmerized by him. After Li Hongyuan finished plucking the peach blossom in his hand, he turned his head to look at her. Even though the other party was a first-class beauty, his expression was still cold, and he was even more displeased at being disturbed. Eunuch Mu had also noticed the woman. He cursed inwardly. How could he have let someone else in due to a moment of carelessness? No, the other party should have been inside for a long time. When Jin Qinwang arrived at Bailong Temple, although he didn't completely clear the area, he was still of noble status. Fearing that someone would bump into him, he would still clear a small area wherever he went. Although this peach forest was very large, because the common people knew that noble people often appeared, once the area was cleared, they would consciously leave. Otherwise, if something happened, it might implicate the entire family. But now that this person had been bumped into by Li Hongyuan, it could only mean one thing. She deliberately avoided him. Especially after seeing the other party's appearance, Eunuch Mu was certain of his conjecture. Thinking about it, Eunuch Mu did not step forward. It was only because this woman's status was noble, and his master's attitude towards her was quite ambiguous. The reason why he said this was because every time his master met this woman, although he still had the attitude of facing a woman who was not interested, he was still milder than other noble ladies. If he didn't know that his master had deep feelings for Miss Luo, Eunuch Mu would have thought that his master had taken a fancy to her. This woman's surname was Ruan. Her maiden name was Fangfei. She was the youngest daughter of the Prime Minister of the Cabinet, Ruan Ruizhong. It must be known that Ruan Ruizhong was even older than Luo Peishan. It could be imagined that this was a proper birth of a daughter at an old age. Of course, because she was born from a second wife, it didn't cause any commotion. If a woman in her 50s gave birth to a pearl, it would be truly strange. After all, in the inner courtyards of high families, women over 40 basically no longer share a room with their husbands. If people found out, they would probably be said to be old, shameless, and jealous. Wan Fangfei saw that Li Hongyuan was looking at her. The infatuation in her eyes disappeared. She didn't avoid him but leisurely stepped forward. This subject's daughter greets Wang Ye. Long live Wang Ye. Her eyes were like autumn water, full of tenderness that was about to overflow. In the morning, when concubine Li approached Li Hongyuan, how did he describe it? Of course, Wan Fangfei was still a woman of the boudoir, and naturally couldn't be said to be having an affair. However, in the eyes of Li Hongyuan, a man who couldn't tolerate a second woman, it was a different approach to achieve the same result. Wan Fangfei admired Li Hongyuan. Not many people knew about this matter, but it definitely wasn't a small number. Especially in private, when she saw Li Hongyuan, she never concealed it. The woman who was usually like water was bold and passionate in front of him. She even said that she hoped that Li Hongyuan would marry her after she reached marriageable age. In the capital, Wan Fangfei was a young lady who was as famous as Sun Yijia. It could be imagined that her talent and appearance were definitely of the highest quality. However, Sun Yijia was a cold and reserved woman, while Wan Fangfei was more towards the gentle and charming side. At the same time, the two were the same age, but Wan Fangfei was younger by 2 months. Why are you here? Li Hongyuan asked in a light voice. This subject's daughter knew that Wang Ye came to White Dragon Temple, so I followed. Wan Fangfei stared at him without hiding anything. Ben Wang is asking why you are alone in the peach blossom forest. Wan Fangfei smiled softly. Naturally, it's because it's easier to hide from the monks of the temple if I'm alone. Her eyes flashed with craftiness and a little pride. Is Wang Ye concerned about this subject's daughter? This subject's daughter knows that Wang Ye treats this subject's daughter differently from others. Li Hongyuan really wanted to ask, where did you come up with such a conclusion? When Wan Fangfei was 7 or 8 years old, when she first met Li Hongyuan in the palace, she said that she wanted to marry him when she grew up. At that time, because she was still young, the elders made fun of her. Everyone else took it as a joke, but only Wan Fangfei remembered it. As Li Hongyuan grew older, his reputation became worse and worse. The other noble ladies all avoided him, but she kept coming forward, trying to get close to him again and again. No matter how many things she heard about him, she never retreated. Last year, after Wan Fangfei's hairpin ceremony, she asked Li Hongyuan again when he would marry her. Li Hongyuan was expressionless, saying that Ben Wang was not interested in her. Wan Fangfei acted as if she didn't hear anything. She said that she didn't mind his bad temper, that she didn't mind him being a playboy. If he took a fancy to any beauty, no matter if it was a man or a woman, she was willing to help him get it. With her as a cover, he didn't even need to wrong himself to hug those women of low status. If he wanted the throne, she would also persuade her father, as long as he was willing to marry her. When she said this, she didn't beg in a humble manner, and didn't even have much emotional fluctuation. She just calmly stated a fact: the benefits he could get by marrying her. Some insiders felt that she was bold and even shameless, but at the same time, they felt that she was too lowly, burying herself in the mud like this. Even if she got what she wanted, what good would it be? However, Wan Fangfei didn't feel that she was lowly, and neither did Li Hongyuan. In his eyes, she was a very strange person. Her thoughts seemed to be centered around Li Hongyuan, but because he wasn't affected by her at all, he didn't have the mentality of being blinded by the situation. He could see very clearly that Wan Fangfei was really the most selfish person. In order to achieve her goal, she would do anything, and even abandon everything. This kind of person would only make people be on guard against her, or even afraid of her. Don't you know that Ben Wang is a jinx to his wife? Wan Fangfei looked at him with a gentler and sweeter gaze. She said, that's because our marriage is predestined by the heavens. Because this subject's daughter is young, the heavens naturally want to remove the obstacles between us. You see, even when His Majesty personally bestowed the marriage, the result was the same. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Li Hongyuan laughed this time. The obstacles between him and one should be removed. As for who removed it, the heavens had. Perhaps to show her sincerity, within 2 days, Wan Fengfei sent a beautiful woman to Li Hongyuan's bed. That was her niece, and she was about to be married. Just like that, she was knocked out, stripped naked, and sent to Li Hongyuan. If she didn't have full trust in her, how could she be so easily sent to Li Hongyuan's residence? The trust that others placed in her, this was how she repaid them. Had she ever thought about what would happen to her niece if she lost her chastity before marriage? Wan Fengfei was an old fox among old foxes. Even Li Hongyuan praised her methods. Did she know that the daughter she cherished in the palm of her hand had such a terrifying side? Because she saw that Li Hongyuan was indifferent, Wan Fengfei began to undress herself and let her and her niece serve him together. How about it? Li Hongyuan was not surprised by her outrageous behavior, because he had seen it in his previous life. At that time, she had just passed the age of 20. Because she was in the imperial family, she had a temperament that ordinary people could not compare to. However, she had not experienced real hardships, so she still retained a trace of innocence. Not only was he surprised, he was also somewhat frightened. Although it was a bit shameful, it was the truth. It was also because of this that he did not take Wan Fengfei, this beauty, into his arms. It must be said that the difference between his reputation in his previous life and this life was not small. Wan Fengfei had her eyes on him. This could be considered an ill-fated relationship. With a sentence of this prince likes reserved, dignified, and well-behaved women, Wan Fengfei might be as magnanimous as before in front of him, but her actions did not overstep the boundary. It showed that she was the most arrogant, most decent, most dignified, and most perfect noble lady. However, there was not the slightest bit of inconsistency on her body. Li Hongyuan swept his eyes over this woman, who felt good about herself from head to toe. This could be considered a great honor for her. The clothes on her body were not delicate, the hair accessories were not ostentatious, and the makeup on her face was just right. Everything about her was close to the word dignified. However, the clothes that clearly did not belong to her age, she firmly controlled them. Even the most picky noblewoman in the capital would not be able to find the slightest flaw on her. Seeing his sizing up gaze, Wan Fengfei generously spread out her arms and twirled in front of him. Does it look good? Under the fluttering peach blossom petals, it was indeed exceptionally beautiful. However, Li Hongyuan, who was used to seeing beauties, was like a blind man at this moment, not seeing anything. If it wasn't for the fact that she still had some value, Li Hongyuan's patience with her would have already run out. It was actually very easy to ruin her. As long as he made public her words and deeds in front of him, Wan Fengfei would be completely finished without even polishing it. Perhaps it was because of this patience that Wan Fengfei always felt that Li Hongyuan had her in his heart. They would get married sooner or later, although her father did not agree with her marrying him, saying that he was not her ideal man. It didn't matter. She could slowly persuade her father. If 1 year was not enough, 2 years. If 2 years were not enough, 3 years. If 3 years were not enough, 10 years. She never thought that she would be old. Anyway, she would marry him in the end. He would always wait for her, wouldn't he? As for the ideal man, as long as she got what she wanted, what did it have to do with whether he was her ideal man or not? Sometimes Wan Fengfei couldn't help but wonder. You can leave now. Leave White Dragon Temple. I'll take my leave. Although reluctant, Wan Fengfei did not disobey him. After leaving the peach blossom forest, she found her maid and walked further and further away. She returned to the place where she stayed before. Because she came in a hurry, her daily necessities were still on the way. She decisively got on the carriage and left White Dragon Temple. Eunuch Mu couldn't guess his master's mood now, so he didn't dare to go forward rashly. Li Hongyuan stood in the same place. He didn't know how long he had been standing there. Suddenly, he felt a little palpitating and reached out to cover his chest. What was going on? Since he came back, Li Hongyuan had been paying attention to his physical condition. He was very sure that his body was healthy without any disease or pain. Those who are affected by it are also connected to the heart. Li Hongyuan's face changed slightly, and he immediately turned around and left the peach blossom forest. Muan, Send a pigeon to ask if something happened to Wan Wan. Eunuch Mu was stunned, but he didn't dare to neglect it. At this time, Miss Luo was the most important. His master had to be put aside. He turned around and rushed to the small courtyard where he lived temporarily regardless of his image. Not sure if something really happened to Jingwan, Li Hongyuan's face was gloomy. Because of his anxiety, he even arrived at the small courtyard one step ahead of Eunuch Mu. Although he was good at martial arts, his hair was still a little messy when he walked so fast, which had never happened to him before. Seeing that his master had passed him and walked ahead, Eunuch Mu could only speed up. It should be known that none of the maids around Li Hongyuan were weak. Even so, when Eunuch Mu rushed back, his face was pale, and he was gasping for breath. Li Hongyuan had already prepared the writing brush and ink for himself. Seeing Eunuch Mu, he said, "Useless thing." Eunuch Mu couldn't help turning paler. His master never used useless things, but he didn't even dare to plead for mercy. He just tried his best to calm down, and then went forward to serve the writing brush and ink, hoping to escape this time. Li Hongyuan wrote so fast that he didn't even care that the letter might fall into the hands of others. But fortunately, his handwriting was not like this. Compared with the fierce style of his writing now, what he wrote to outsiders could only be regarded as mediocre. Just as he finished writing and rolled it up, Ani, who was dressed as a guard, hurried in from outside. "Master, Miss Luo fell off the cliff halfway up the mountain." Bang! With a loud noise, Li Hongyuan smashed the table. In a flash, he had already arrived in front of Ani and grabbed his neck. "Speak clearly." Ani felt suffocated, not only because his neck was grabbed, but also because of Li Hongyuan's eyes that could devour people. "Moss Master." Li Hongyuan threw him away. "Let's go." Forcibly suppressing his choking cough, he hurriedly followed Li Hongyuan's pace and spoke in detail while walking. "I don't know why, but Miss Luo, who originally planned to come to White Dragon Temple tomorrow, came to White Dragon Temple today. Elder Ruan's youngest legitimate daughter was riding a carriage down the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, a wild beast suddenly rushed out of the forest beside the road, startling the horse and causing it to lose control for a moment. Miss Luo and the others just happened to go up the mountain. The two sides collided, and the horses on that side were also startled. It happened to be the section near the cliff, and several carriages fell off the cliff together." Ani paused. Wu Wanho's heir and his wife were also traveling with Miss Luo. Li Hongyuan's footsteps paused. "Who are you talking about? Fu Yenting?" Ani couldn't help but take a step back. His master's expression was as if he wanted to eat Wu Wanho's heir alive. His master's attitude towards Wu Wanho's heir had always been bad, but no one knew the reason. Now it seemed that it was related to the future princess? Otherwise, why would his reaction be so big? Perhaps he was stung by Fu Yenting's appearance, but Li Hongyuan actually calmed down a bit. He rubbed between his eyebrows, making his chaotic thoughts a bit clearer. Secretly assist the monks in the temple in saving people. Investigate why Wan Wan came early and didn't send a message to Ben Wang, as well as whether the startling of the horse was an accident or man-made. Also carry out the arrangements right now. In order to formally meet with Jingwan, Li Hongyuan painstakingly prepared a scheme of injuring himself to gain the enemy's confidence. He also put on a big play for those people in the capital to muddy the waters even more. "Master, forgive this subordinate for speaking bluntly, but isn't it not too good to do this now? What if Miss Luo is seriously injured? Everything would be in vain. You'd better all beg for her to be unscathed." Li Hongyuan's starry eyes grew darker, brewing a madness that could swallow everything. And he originally wanted to say, "What if Miss Luo dies?" He was only glad that he changed his mind when the words reached his mouth. Otherwise, he was afraid that his blood would splatter on the spot. Still not scramming. A true scheme of injuring oneself to gain the enemy's confidence wasn't a self-directed act. It was carefully arranged so that others would act according to your wishes. Although White Dragon Temple was a temple, and even had Great Master Liaochen overseeing it, as long as the word imperial was involved, there was no way it was clean. As long as it wasn't too excessive, such as killing or obscenity, Great Master Liaochen would turn a blind eye to it. In less than a quarter of an hour, An assassination was carried out in broad daylight. The layout was fast and the actions were swift. It was clear that White Dragon Temple also had people working for Li Hongyuan. In order to achieve the best results, Li Hongyuan didn't have too many people around him. However, because it was necessary to make the other party's people stay, every one of them was a ruthless character. Once the fight started, Li Hongyuan used all his strength. In addition, Jingwan's life or death was unknown. Suppressing his anxiety turned into a bloodthirsty desire. He pursued speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. Not only was he ruthless to the enemy, he was also ruthless to himself. As long as it wasn't a fatal injury, he could even exchange injury for injury. The masked assassins of the fake monk then realized that there was a mistake. This Jin Qinhuang wasn't just an empty shell. He was clearly that wolf, owl, and lion. Retreat. Unfortunately, it was already too late. They had already been led to a place arranged in advance. Because of the terrain, it wasn't easy to retreat. Even if they retreated, they would certainly be caught. Rather than being caught, it was better to commit suicide than to be caught. Since there was no way to retreat, they could only fight to the end. Killing Jin Qinhuang was the only way to survive. As they fought and retreated, Li Hongyuan's clothes were almost soaked in blood. Some of it was his own, some of it was the enemy's. From the looks of it, he was becoming more and more exhausted. But his posture was nimble from beginning to end, without the slightest bit of weakness or surrender. The assassins trembled with fear. Their master still had such a terrifying opponent in the dark. They didn't know how many hidden losses he would suffer. Not to mention them, even Li Hongyuan's people were frightened by him. Although it wasn't that they hadn't seen their master's ruthless appearance, but those people were just trapped beasts without any leeway to resist. That was how he wanted to torment them. But now it was a real life and death struggle. However, it didn't seem like their master was facing this kind of thing for the first time. Having good martial arts was one thing, fighting to the death was another. His hands were not soft, he didn't fear the blade. His reactions were agile, all of which showed that he had experienced hundreds of battles. The assassins originally had a lot of advantages in terms of numbers. Before they started, they felt that they had a 90% chance of success. At this moment, their manpower was sharply reduced again and again. However, Jin Qinhuang's side was also an arrow at the end of its flight. There were only 2 people left at his side. It was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Gritting their teeth, they prepared for the final battle. Although the trick of injuring oneself to gain the enemy's confidence may have been an impromptu idea, this assassination had been prepared long ago. It only needed an opportunity. Li Hongyuan naturally couldn't really throw his own life away. At the critical moment, Li Hongyuan saw his bodyguards and several martial monks coming over. Li Hongyuan backhanded his blade. Because it was too tricky, the assassin couldn't block it. On the verge of death, Li Hongyuan burst out with his last remaining strength. He was originally at the edge of the slope. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, he took the opportunity to roll down. Wang Ye, the bodyguards rushed forward and saw this kind of scene. For a moment, their hearts jumped to their throats. The bodyguard who rushed to the front, without saying a word, cleanly disposed of the masked assassin, who had one last breath left. Another bodyguard next to him grabbed him. Leave him alive. But it was a pity that it was already too late. I saw Wang Ye roll down. In a moment of panic, my eyes turned red. Enough, and he coldly shouted. He was the head of the shadow guards, and also the head of the bodyguards. It is more important to find Wang Ye first. If something happens to Wang Ye, needless to say, the others also knew that they were unable to protect their master. Even if Wang Ye didn't die, they absolutely wouldn't have a good end. However, if Wang Ye was still alive, they might still have a chance to live. Not daring to be negligent, they hurriedly followed the place where Li Hongyuan rolled down. Ani checked the 2 brothers who followed Li Hongyuan. Although they were seriously injured, fortunately, their lives weren't in danger. They were just exhausted. He handed them over to the monks, and also followed them down. After checking, the situation wasn't very good. Although it was a slope, it was also very steep. Perhaps it was because Li Hongyuan was unlucky. There were clearly trees next to him, but he just had to slide down along the lush weeds. The bloodstains were very obvious. Below there was a river, but the height was at least more than 300 feet. This situation made the bodyguards' faces pale. "Boss, what should we do?" https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652951. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, Bicken.com. Chapter 71. As for Li Hongyuan, who was suspected to be in a very bad condition or even dead, his condition was indeed not very good. The injury was not fake, and the excessive blood loss also caused him to feel a little dizzy. Although he was not in the water, he was still at the riverbank. "Master," one of the 4 shadow guards by his side, number 9, opened his mouth. He wanted to persuade him to go back, but in the end he said, "Let this subordinate help you deal with your wound." If the wound was dealt with, how could he continue acting? Wan was so intelligent. She would definitely be able to see that Li Hongyuan had only taken some pills to stop the pain and bleeding. "How is Wan?" The shadow guard subconsciously reached out to help him, but Li Hongyuan glanced at him. The shadow guard also realized that he had made a stupid mistake. Because of Njio's excellent medical skills, compared to the other shadow guards, he had the benevolence of a doctor. Another person tugged at him and stepped forward himself. Replying to Master, "Miss Luo is fine. Nanny Gong found her before us, and has already confirmed that she should only have some bruises on her body. In addition, because of the shock from rolling down, she has temporarily fallen into a coma. She will wake up very soon, and will not affect Master's plan. As for the others, the situation has not been confirmed." After a pause, Miss Luo was in the same carriage as the other girls. The female protector was not in the carriage at that time, so she could not protect Miss Luo. She couldn't help but explain to Granny Gong. Although Granny Gong's master had changed, it was still easy for her master to punish her. After learning about Jingwan's situation, they were actually very surprised, although they all hoped that Miss Luo's skin was not broken at all. However, although the cliff wasn't very high, the bottom of the cliff was very dangerous. Not to mention the rugged rocks and dense vegetation, there were many areas that had collapsed due to the erosion of the rain. The bottom level was at least 50 to 60 feet high. The second level was less than 10 feet wide and was covered in slippery moss. Below that was the river bank and rocks. The height of the 2 levels was more than 10 feet. If one was accidentally thrown out of the carriage, it was very likely that one would fall to the bottom. Not to mention being smashed to pieces, there was a high chance that one would die. Including Wan Fangfei's carriage, there were a total of 3 carriages that fell off the cliff. But there were more people. Among everyone, Jingwan seemed to be the unluckiest to fall to the second level. Moreover, she was less than a palm's width away from the edge. However, she also seemed to be the luckiest to have suffered the lightest injuries. However, it was precisely because of Jingwan's position that these shadow guards were able to easily move her to the riverbank at the bottom, saving them the risk of being discovered before anyone else could find her. As long as their master went there, he would be able to have a perfect encounter. However, it was not a simple matter to take someone away from the lady protector. She was like an old hen protecting her chicks. She almost fought with them. Although Li Hongyuan was still able to divert his attention to plan and kill Jingwan, after learning that Jingwan was in trouble, his attention returned to its original place only after confirming that Jingwan was safe. Originally, he had prepared for the worst. If Wan was seriously injured, he did not mind changing his original plan and saving the damsel in distress. However, God was on his side. As for whether Nurse Gong was in the wrong or not, it could be put aside for the time being. He would deal with it later. As for how Li Hongyuan and the others came down from the height of dozens of feet, Li Hongyuan had long been accustomed to preparing for a rainy day. He He had already figured out the mountain terrain of White Dragon Temple. He even let the shadow guards go to almost every corner. When they came down from the top, there was a road that could not be called a road. Ordinary people could not walk on it at all. However, after they came down, it was completely destroyed. His plan had to leave enough time for him to be alone with Wan. Li Hongyuan stood up. With injuries all over his body, he walked down the riverbank step by step. Although his pace was not fast, each step was firm, leaving a trail of bloody footprints on the ground. The shadow guards followed behind Li Hongyuan and cleaned up the bloodstains he left behind. It was enough as long as they could create an illusion that their master fell into the river and then went down along the river. The shadow guards looked at their master's back and couldn't help but feel an indescribable emotion. Their master's temperament was sinister, ruthless, and temperamental, but they had a deep respect for him, not only because of his ability to devise strategies and control the world, but also because of his unyielding pride and his ability to do things to the extreme. It was not a short distance to reach the place where Jingwan was now, not to mention the numerous small bends. There were even 2 big bends. It was not easy for Li Hongyuan, who was getting more and more tired with every step. If he let the shadow guards carry him forward, it was not that they could not move faster, but he would never allow it. Li Hongyuan felt that he was about to reach his limit, but even so, he did not think of anything else. He only thought that he had suffered a big loss this time, and must find a way to make up for it from Wan. The more he thought, the more discordant it became. The degree of filth was directly proportional to his perfect face. Fortunately, no one knew. Otherwise, who knows how many people would be stunned. And then, should it be said that he was worthy of being called Jin Qinwang, who had seen all kinds of beauties? The dizziness became more and more intense, and the scenery in his eyes began to blur. However, the moment Jingwan's figure entered his line of sight, he could no longer see anything else. Step by step, he unwaveringly approached and waded into the water without hesitation. Fortunately, the water in this section was not deep, and the current was relatively gentle. However, the river was very wide. The blood that had already dried up, after meeting the water, quickly spread out. Everywhere he passed, there was a pool of blood. Midway, his body uncontrollably staggered twice, drenched in sweat. The shadow guards formed a semicircle around him, fearing that he would fall into the water. Obviously, they still underestimated their master. Li Hongyuan walked to the edge. His consciousness was both fuzzy and clear. And this position was enough. He let himself fall down and completely sank into darkness, half of his body submerged by the river. And Jiao hurriedly stepped forward and checked his pulse. He turned back. "You must hurry. If you soak in the water for too long, I'm afraid that master's life will be in danger." "Then what are you waiting for? Go and wake Miss Luo up." And Jiao hurriedly got up and walked towards Jingwan, who was lying near the edge of the cliff. They naturally couldn't be more familiar with Jingwan, but they didn't understand what was so special about this girl that could make master do this. If she was a stunning woman, perhaps master just took a fancy to her beauty. If she was noble and had a strong background, perhaps master was adding help to seize the throne. However, she was neither. Thinking of her current appearance, such a proud person, who didn't even have a scratch on her skin in the past, not to mention the large and small injuries on her body, she was also dying. They couldn't help but have an inexplicable resentment towards Jingwan. "And Jiao, what are you thinking about? Hurry up." Another shadow guard walked in and urged. And Jiao hurriedly took out a small porcelain bottle that he carried with him, unplugged the stopper, and shook it under Jingwan's nose. Jingwan frowned, and a slight sound came out of her mouth. She showed signs of waking up. "Let's go." Pulling in Jiao, they quickly left. If Miss Luo woke up and saw them, then everything master did would be in vain. The 4 people quickly went away, hiding in the dark and paying attention to the situation here. It was quiet, but Jiao was particularly silent. The shadow guard just now put his hand on his shoulder. "And Jiao, you just have to remember one thing. No matter what Miss Luo is like, she is the person master has chosen. She will be the future Jin Wangfei, our female master. We can't interfere." What we have to do is to abide by our duties and do whatever master asks us to do. It's just that I can't accept it for a while when I suddenly saw master like that. Don't worry, I know what I should do. And Jiu also understood that as a shadow guard, his emotions just now were a little dangerous. He must remove it as soon as possible. If master knew, he would go back and train again. If it was serious, he would directly lose his life. Jingwan felt pain all over her body. She slowly opened her eyes. After a while, she was completely awake. She tried to sit up. It wasn't very strenuous. She moved her hands and feet and carefully felt it. Very good. She was basically sure that it was all superficial injuries and didn't hurt her internal organs. However, because she was a little dizzy, she might have a slight concussion. Jingwan stood up and thought of the thrill of falling off the cliff. She thought that she might die this time. She didn't expect that the actual consequences were almost negligible. However, she probably had to thank Wuanho Shitzi for being able to survive. Although she panicked after falling off the cliff, her mind wasn't blank. She remembered very clearly that after being thrown out of the carriage, Wuanho Shitzi pulled her in time and didn't let her fall straight to the sharp boulder. Although it was also because of him that she fell, his life-saving grace couldn't be denied. Jingwan was very worried about Sunny Jia, Yuan Qiao, and Zhou Shuang, who were in the same carriage as her. She didn't know if they would be as lucky as her. However, fortunately, their carriage was faster. Grandmother's carriage was much behind and definitely wasn't affected. Looking at the place where she fell, it had to be said that her luck was heaven-defying. There were rocks all around, but only this place was full of sand, ash, and a lot of scattered hay. Jingwan didn't show any surprise towards these abrupt things. This was because there was a temporary resting place that was dug out by people. There were more hay and other things piled up inside. Presumably, it was the temporary resting place of the villagers who went along the river to enter the mountain. The hay that was dug out outside should be the animals and monkeys that came down from the mountain. The monkeys, hiding in the dark, were very anxious because their future mistress hadn't noticed their master. Most of Jingwan's thoughts were right. This was indeed the masterpiece of the villagers at the foot of the White Dragon Temple. This accident saved a lot of effort for the secret guards to fake the crime scene. Jingwan looked up. It was so high that she definitely couldn't go up. It wouldn't be easy for the people above to come down to find her. She looked around again. There were endless cliffs, and she didn't know how long the river was. Instead of spending time trying to go out along the river, it was better to wait here. After all, there might be another way down from the White Dragon Temple. If she went by herself and missed it, it would be very disadvantageous for her. She could only secretly pray that they were all right. As for her grandmother and others, there was nothing she could do about it. Suddenly, there was a splash of water. Jingwan looked back. Before she noticed where the sound came from, she saw the figure lying by the water. Jingwan's heart jumped. She hesitated for a moment. It seemed that the person floated down from the upper reaches. This might be a big trouble, but she couldn't just leave him to die. Seeing Jingwan walking towards their master, the several people in the dark finally breathed a sigh of relief. Jingwan walked to Li Hongyuan's side. At first glance, this person was really miserable. His clothes were torn into pieces. Looking at the neat cuts, it was obviously caused by a sharp weapon. If blood was seen every time he went down, it could be imagined how serious his injuries were. Squatting down, she reached out to check his breath. Although it was weak, he was still alive. This was good. However, Jingwan wasn't sure what his situation was. She didn't know how long he could hold on. Would he disappear in the next moment? Because there was some disheveled hair on his face, Jingwan still felt that this person was somewhat familiar. She brushed aside the hair. Her first thought was that this person looked too good. Then she immediately reacted. Wasn't this the sixth prince, Jin Qinhuang? Although Jingwan only met Li Hongyuan once in Dingguo Gongfu, and didn't even look at him carefully, his face was really too conspicuous. It was hard to not remember. It was obvious that he was assassinated. Sure enough, it was a big trouble. Thinking of this person's reputation, although she couldn't arbitrarily judge a person based on what she heard, this face was really too attractive. It might not be a groundless rumor. Even so, Jingwan still decided to save him. After all, Jingwan wasn't a native of this world. In addition, the current situation was special. She couldn't care less about the boundaries between men and women. She reached out and touched his chest, neck, and limbs to make sure that there weren't any fractures. She didn't want to cause a second injury if she moved him. These simple first aid methods, as well as some life skills, were all things she had been forced to learn during the most difficult period of her previous life. This Miss Luo is rather too. Master to her is a strange man. A shadow guard couldn't help but frown. She's checking if Master has any fractures. It's obvious that she knows some medical skills. The current situation is special. Even if her behavior is inappropriate, she can't be blamed. On the contrary, she's meticulous and wholeheartedly thinking for Master. Under the premise of knowing Master's identity, this is really rare. After all, if she's not careful, she'll be putting her own reputation on the line. Not many women in the boudoir can do this. And Jiu opened his mouth. Because of Jingwan's behavior, his view of her changed a little. But if it was another man, would she also be like this? No, there wouldn't be an if. The Lady Protector wasn't a vegetarian. Because they were here, the Lady Protector didn't follow them down. Other men shouldn't even think about getting close to Miss Luo. Thinking like this, his feelings naturally improved a lot. After confirming that it was only an injury caused by a sharp weapon, Jingwan struggled to help him up. Because she had been exercising all year round, she naturally wasn't a delicate and weak woman. It was a little difficult for a man's weight to be all pressed on her body, but it wasn't to the extent that she couldn't walk. However, because of the force, the injuries on her body were more intense. Jingwan half supported and half dragged him into the temporary shelter and put him on the hay. Since she decided to save him, she naturally didn't think much about it. She quickly took off his accessories and put them aside. Then, she carefully took off his clothes, leaving only a pair of underwear. His appearance was off the charts, and so was his figure. A full 8-pack of abdominal muscles, but they weren't protruding. They presented a perfect streamlined shape. She didn't need to touch it to feel the strength contained in it. He really was the darling of the Creator. However, this wasn't a figure that a man who was intoxicated with wine and women could have. Jingwan naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to these. This perfect body really had a lot of injuries, mainly concentrated on the chest and arms. However, it was less than expected. Obviously, there were some places where the clothes were only torn. Even so, the situation wasn't optimistic. The wounds were a little white, because of soaking in water. However, Jingwan didn't learn medical skills after all. She didn't know the result of soaking for a long time. In fact, Li Hongyuan's plan wasn't without flaws, especially when targeting Jingwan. She wasn't his enemy, so there was really no need to be so meticulous and thorough. After careful consideration, there would always be clues. It was just that Jingwan didn't know that she was being targeted. She also deliberately calculated her. She never thought in that direction. Even if she had doubts, she wouldn't think deeply about it. Li Hongyuan also grasped this mentality of hers, so he could be so unscrupulous. In this place where a cold could kill people, these wounds were easy to be infected if they weren't treated in time. Jingwan's face was very dignified. Looking around, there were very obvious traces. It could be seen that people often came and went. Jingwan looked around and found some commonly used things, such as a fire extinguisher and a crock. Although she knew how to make a fire even if she didn't have it, it would take time. Moreover, she only knew how to do it, but she didn't really try it. She didn't know if it would work. It was better to have ready-made things. It was better to have some ready-made things. She used hay to light the fire, then added some firewood to make a fire. She then moved Li Hongyuan's body, so that he wouldn't be cold. Jingwan picked up a crock, and took Li Hongyuan's underwear. She went to the river to wash it, and then filled it with water. She put the crock on a simple stove. After the water boiled, she poured some out and put it to the side to cool. Then she tore open the clothes and threw them in to boil. She scooped them up. Because it was urgent, Jingwan dried them. She didn't know if this would affect the disinfection. She shook the cold water to quickly cool it down. Then she dipped a cloth in the water, and wiped Li Hongyuan's wounds one by one. She then wrapped the dried cloth around them. Jingwan's bandaging skills were naturally unquestionable. When Jingwan half-carried Li Hongyuan and wrapped the cloth around his back, she suddenly heard this prince murmur in her ear. His breath fell on her sensitive earlobe, making it slightly itchy. It seemed like he was calling someone's name. Jingwan couldn't hear it clearly. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but he seemed to be calling Wan Wan. Jingwan naturally wouldn't be narcissistic enough to think that he was calling her. He was either calling someone else, or it was a similar pronunciation. The deepest wound on her left arm was so deep that the bone was almost visible. It was very troublesome, but there was no needle and thread. She couldn't stitch it up even if she wanted to. After she finished, Jingwan's body was sweating slightly due to the pain. Jingwan frowned. She also needed to wash up. Jingwan went to the river and wiped her body with a wet handkerchief. Then she saw the fish swimming in the river. Very good, dinner was settled. In her previous life, when she was abnormally poor, catching fish was naturally a necessary skill. She didn't expect that even this skill would come in handy now. Jingwan turned back and found a few strands of pliable dry grass. She tied up some areas of her body that were in the way, such as her sleeves and skirt. Then she returned to the river and took off her shoes and socks. She stood barefoot on the gravel. Her feet, which had been wearing shoes all year round, suddenly came into contact with the ground. It really wasn't an ordinary pain. However, because Jingwan often walked barefoot on the cobblestones in her own territory, this bit of pain wasn't unbearable. She stretched her feet into the water to explore. The river water in the early spring was still relatively cold. What's more, the feet were not as sensitive as the hands that were exposed to the air all year round. When both feet were submerged in the water, Jingwan couldn't help but shiver a little. After standing for a bit to adapt, she slowly moved forward. Her movements were very light. Her feet were basically gliding in the water. She didn't raise her feet, so naturally there wasn't much movement. When the water was about to reach her knees, she found her target. Jingwan stopped, bent down, opened her hands, and used only a few seconds to lock onto the target. She quickly reached out. With a whoosh, she raised her hands. A fish that was wider than a palm was tightly caught in her hands. Because the fish left the water, it quickly swayed its tail, flinging out water droplets that scattered like pearls. Sure enough, it was something that was engraved into her bones. After so many years, she still didn't get used to it. Looking at this plump fish, Jingwan smiled with satisfaction. Originally, if it was only for her to eat, one was enough. However, she wasn't sure if that honorable Jin Qinwang would wake up, so she decided to catch another one. Retreating, she threw the fish in her hands towards the riverbank. Jingwan didn't know that her straightforward action of catching the fish was clearly seen by several people in the dark. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They believed that even if they were to catch the fish, they might not be able to catch it with their bare hands. What's more, she succeeded in one strike. This was definitely a fish-catching veteran. Speaking of which, how could a young lady from the boudoir have this kind of ability? The Luo family was able to cover half the sky in Qian Prefecture. There were naturally countless kinds of villages. Perhaps it was because she was fond of playing that she practiced this skill? But if it was just playing, how could she play to this extent? But they couldn't think of any other explanation. So in the end, should they say that she had ***, or that she had a unique style? Perhaps it should be said that she's worthy of being the person that master fancied. She's far from being comparable to an ordinary delicate woman? One of them said. The other three looked at him, their eyes clearly saying, "There's such a saying?" For Jingwan, catching the fish was relatively simple. Instead, it was more troublesome to handle it. Because of the strict management of ironware, in a farmer's household, every item that was forged with iron was very precious. There were no knives at all. As a result, Jingwan could only temporarily use a stone to polish one. To save time, choosing a stone was naturally very important. Polishing a stone was definitely not an easy task. After a few rounds, Jingwan's hands turned red. She raised her hand to look, and took the remaining cloth to wrap around her hand. This was better. The shadow guards were vexed, and had already made preparations to be punished by their master. The future Wang Fei was a proud and precious person. Even a little bit of skin would make their master's heart ache. To be tossed around like this. If they had known earlier, they would have left a dagger on their master's hand. A Wang Ye carrying an exquisite dagger inlaid with gems was very normal, and would never arouse suspicion. It took a lot of time to properly handle the fish. Being able to find salt was definitely an unexpected surprise. Although it was a little less, it was enough to cook fish soup. Originally, she wanted to roast a fish, but after thinking about it, she decided against it. Boiling the fish soup, she dried her wet clothes. From time to time, she would also feed Li Hongyuan some water to moisten his lips. Looking at the chipped rough porcelain bowl in her hand, Jingwan even joked a few words to amuse herself. The noble Jin Qinwang has been reduced to using this kind of thing. It's really wronged you. If Li Hongyuan had consciousness, he would probably think, Ben Wang doesn't mind you feeding him personally. Jingwan drank a bowl of fish soup. Perhaps it was because of the tossing and turning, plus her usual appetite was not bad. She ate the entire fish. Fish that only had salt added naturally couldn't compare to meticulously cooked fish. However, it was purely natural. Perhaps it was because the water and soil here was different, that the fish didn't have a fishy smell. The taste was still not bad. She fed Li Hongyuan some fish soup. Without a spoon or the like, it was really difficult to feed him. The sky gradually darkened, but there was still no one coming to find them. It seemed that there was no way down. They should be preparing to take a detour from the foot of the mountain, or some other place. Jingwan herself was fine, but she was very worried about Li Hongyuan. His current situation wasn't good at all. She didn't need to take any chances. It was inevitable that he would have a fever. Although she was tired and her body was in pain, Jingwan didn't dare to sleep. Not long after night fell, Li Hongyuan really started to have a fever. Jingwan applied a compress on his forehead and wiped his body at the same time, over and over again without stopping. She didn't expect that this would make his fever go down. She just hoped that he would feel a little more comfortable. Perhaps it was because of the high fever, or perhaps it was because deep in his heart, he was still thinking about the purpose of this trip. Li Hongyuan woke up, but he was still in a confused state and wasn't very clear-headed. However, he was very sure of one thing. The person in front of him was the one he wanted. Jingwan was caught off guard. Li Hongyuan grabbed Jingwan's wrist, and as he exerted force, she bumped into his sturdy chest. Wan. His voice was full of infinite affection and yearning, and his voice was hoarse, low, and sexy. At that moment, it was simply enough to make one's bones melt. Jingwan was suddenly a little confused. She didn't even hear what he said clearly. After a moment, she realized how ambiguous their current posture was. She struggled, but the more she struggled, the tighter Li Hongyuan held her. His hand was like a pair of pliers, and Li Hongyuan's consciousness wasn't clear. He didn't have much willpower, and didn't know how to restrain himself. He just followed his inner desire, longing for her, wanting her. Her struggle made him feel that she was trying to escape from him. How could he allow this to happen? He grabbed her, turned over, and pressed her under his body. Jingwan's limbs were locked tightly. He suddenly opened his eyes. Those deep eyes were filled with an almost crazy possessiveness. Wan, you are mine. You can only be mine in this life. Don't even think about escaping. Then he unceremoniously kissed her. Jingwan was a little frightened. In the face of danger, it was instinctive to resist. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652953. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition reading website Bicken.com. Chapter 72. Jingwan felt like she wasn't facing a person but a real beast. His teeth seemed to have sunk deep into her blood vessels. She didn't dare to move. Her body froze, and her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Perhaps because he felt that Jingwan had become obedient, Li Hongyuan slowly let go of her. Then, he stuck out his tongue and licked it. It was obviously salty and had a rusty taste, but he seemed to find it incomparably delicious. He licked and sucked 2 more times, so much so that Jingwan could even hear him swallow. Wan, you're mine. Mine. Don't try to leave me. Otherwise, I'll catch you and swallow you whole even if you're at the end of the world. Although his voice wasn't particularly clear, Jingwan heard every word clearly this time. Was it too late to regret now? She was kind enough to save someone. She definitely didn't want to put herself in danger. She felt that she was more unlucky than the farmer in The Farmer and the Snake. At least, the snake attacked indiscriminately. As for her, she was completely suffering for someone else, okay? That's right. No matter how many times Li Hongyuan called Wan, and no matter how familiar Jingwan was with this name, she didn't feel the slightest sense of substitution. She didn't want to feel the slightest sense of substitution. She cursed the person who stressed her name countless times in her heart. Hurry up and tie up your extremely controlling beast. Don't let it out to harm others. One day in the future, when Jingwan found out that the Wan he was talking about was her, she wondered what expression Jingwan would have. Should she tie up this beast or not? Tying it up would only harm herself. If she didn't tie it up, it would harm others, and herself. After all, Li Hongyuan wasn't in a good state. When he loosened his grip, he seemed a little weak. His whole body was lying on Jingwan's body defenselessly. However, the 2 words Wan kept coming out of his mouth, as if he was sleep-talking. Li Hongyuan didn't respond for a long time. Jingwan thought that he had fainted again. Wan. These 2 words suddenly rang in her ears. Jingwan didn't feel anything at first, but as she listened, Jingwan felt embarrassed. Jingwan tried to push him away. Then, as if he was greatly provoked, he slowly raised his head, opened his eyes and stared at Jingwan. Wan, do you want to leave me that much? His palms slid around her waist and unconsciously tugged at her clothes. He felt as if he could tear them apart with just a little force. No. Jingwan anxiously and quickly denied it. She grabbed his hand that was on her waist. If her clothes were ruined by him, then she would have no choice but to risk her life to escape from his side. However, he didn't wear clothes because of his injury. It was completely different from a man and a woman whose clothes were ruined. If it was the former, she could barely stand on the side of righteousness. If it was the latter, she would completely lose her innocence. She only had one fate. When she went back, she would be carried into Jin Palace in a small sedan chair. From then on, she would be isolated from the world. It's just that it's a little uncomfortable to be pressed down by you. Jingwan patted him comfortingly. Li Hongyuan frowned for a while, as if he just realized what she was saying. As long as you obediently stay by my side, I can do anything you want. Li Hongyuan said. He hugged Jingwan's waist and turned her over, letting her lie on her side. However, his arms never let go. Then Jingwan found that his wound was bleeding again because of the movement just now. You're feverish. I'll wipe your body. Also, I'll treat your wound again. Can you let go of me first? Li Hongyuan, who closed his eyes again, acted as if he didn't hear anything. Naturally, he was indifferent. Jingwan was helpless. After thinking about it, she braced herself and moved closer to his ear. She softly comforted him and promised him that she would never leave. Li Hongyuan, who was originally quiet, gradually shook his head from side to side. His brows were tightly knitted, as if he was in a dream. His arms unconsciously tightened. After the danger to Jingwan's neck passed, her waist was in danger again. It was about to break. She should have looked at the almanac before going out today. Perhaps there was a taboo on it. She was thinking about whether she should find the culprit who caused them to come to White Dragon Temple today. Because of Jingwan's words, Li Hongyuan remembered that in his previous life, Jingwan also saved him. The difference between that time and now was that his life was really in danger. If it weren't for Jingwan, he was sure that he would have died. What's more, at that time he was at the most painful turning point in his life. He was suspicious of everything and everyone around him. Jingwan knew his situation and knew that it was better for her to save him than not. But she still chose to save him without hesitation. She also went through a lot, and was facing an even bigger storm. Instead of being crushed, she became more tenacious. She tolerated his bad temper and took care of him wholeheartedly day after day. Although she almost didn't say anything after he woke up, and there was no smile on her face, you could see that she always had a straight back. Li Hongyuan didn't know when it started, but he no longer spoke ill of her or smashed the medicine bowl she brought. He began to be silent, and his eyes began to follow her. Before that, he had already noticed this woman. He even admired her in his heart. Her unyielding spirit, her courage, her tenacity, and her ability were far inferior to many men. When he couldn't take his eyes off her, he knew that he wanted her. However, this woman had already become someone else's wife. She didn't belong to him. He no longer gave up on himself. So what if everyone in the world wronged him? There was always someone who could be sincere to him. She did her best to save him, so he had to be worthy of her sincerity, right? From that moment on, Li Hongyuan really changed. He wanted to sit on the throne, and he wanted this woman. It could be said that without Jingwan, there might not be the Emperor Li Hongyuan, who became the final winner in the desperate situation. Unfortunately, there was a word in the world called too late. He didn't have the time to obtain the supreme power to protect her, and she had already died. Therefore, when he had a chance to start over, the throne was no longer the most important thing to him. What he wanted most was to have her, and then protect her. He wanted to keep her smile, and protect her restrained gentleness and straightforwardness. Even he couldn't hurt a single finger of hers. Of course, this was with the exception of special injuries caused under certain special circumstances. He schemed, sought the throne, and seized power. It was all just to let her stand at the highest position. No one could threaten her position. Jingwan had never experienced it herself, so she would never know that her heart was actually the softest. Even now, when she was under Li Hongyuan's control, when she comforted him, she removed all distracting thoughts and used up all her patience. That was her most unique gentleness. Not many people could resist it, especially when they were in a vulnerable state. Even though he knew that things were different now, Li Hongyuan was still trapped in the dream of his previous life. Because she was someone else's wife, she rejected him. Even though he used despicable means to take her, she still ran away from him. Then, before he could obtain the supreme power, she left him completely. She was so far away that he could never reach her. So now, he only wanted to hold on to her tightly. No matter if it was herself or anyone else, he couldn't let her leave him. He couldn't. No matter what kind of emotions Jingwan had, she couldn't vent it on someone who was seriously injured and unconscious. She had to be patient and tell him over and over again that she wouldn't leave. That she wouldn't leave. Li Hongyuan finally sobered up a little again. He opened his eyes and looked at Jingwan. His intestines turned 100 times, tenderly and affectionately. Wan. His gaze at this moment made Jingwan's heart skip 2 beats uncontrollably. She felt that it was inexplicably familiar. Plus, his voice. Jingwan abruptly froze, suddenly remembering that strange spring dream last night. That man who made love with her. The only thing she remembered clearly was the other party's gaze. But it coincided with Jin Qinhuang's gaze at this time. Jingwan had the urge to cover her face. Could it be that last night's dream was actually a kind of foreshadowing? Foreshadowing her encounter today? But why didn't it foreshadow anything else, such as falling off the cliff today? Some things, once they crawled out of your memory, the difficulty of pressing them back would increase exponentially. Especially now that she was in a state of ambiguity and fanciful thoughts. Being stared at by him like this. In addition to the disturbing images that kept appearing in her mind, Jingwan inexplicably felt her face turn red and her heart beat faster. She awkwardly and somewhat embarrassedly turned her gaze away. Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her chin, forcing her to look at him. When Jingwan felt that he might kiss her again, he opened his mouth and said, Wan has never taken the initiative to kiss me. He pointed at his chapped lips. Kiss me once, then I'll let you go. Even if Jingwan had a good temper, she couldn't help but want to kick him to death. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't have any interaction with him from beginning to end, and that his attitude was too natural and casual, Jingwan would have thought that he was actually calling her, and that his consciousness was completely awake. He was deliberately taking liberties with her, and not treating her as someone else. Li Hongyuan closed his eyes again. His attitude was very obvious. If she wasn't willing, then forget it. But don't expect him to let go. Jingwan was so angry that she raised her hand and hammered him. Li Hongyuan happened to fall on the open wound, and he groaned. Jingwan hurriedly apologized. When he took an inch and asked for a mile again, her apology was immediately thrown out of the sky. She even gave him a few kisses, but subconsciously, she used less strength. If the mountain doesn't come to me, then I'll go to the mountain. Li Hongyuan held the back of Jingwan's head and kissed her fiercely. He swept her mouth completely to the side, let her go, and set her free. Jingwan immediately rolled around. She didn't even care about her image, jumped up and wiped her mouth fiercely. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, who was so energetic, and suddenly smiled. He said in a low voice, "That's great." This time, Jingwan really covered her face with her hands. His appearance was too foul, and his smile was even more foul. She was clearly the one at a disadvantage, but why was her anger getting weaker and weaker? She admitted that she was a love-struck fool. But it turned out that there was an invisible love-struck fool attribute. It was just that she hadn't met such an evildoer before. So it hadn't been discovered? Li Hongyuan gave a low laugh. I didn't know that Wanwan had such a side. Then he suddenly coughed twice. The red on his face from the high temperature became more obvious, and his breathing weakened again. Jingwan threw away all her thoughts in an instant. She reached out to touch Li Hongyuan's forehead. She unconsciously pulled her hand back like she had been burned. The temperature rose again. Jingwan's heart was burning with anxiety. She was not only worried about Li Hongyuan's life, but also about her little life and the fate of the Luo family. A dignified prince had died in front of her. It had nothing to do with her, but it also had something to do with her. Then the Luo family would be implicated by her. Your Highness, please don't let anything happen to you. Your Highness. Jingwan hurriedly rebandaged his wound and wiped his body, while trying to wake him up. Wanwan, don't leave me. Even if he fell asleep again, he still murmured this sentence. All right, I won't leave. As long as you're well, I'll promise you anything. Jingwan should be glad. When she answered this sentence, Li Hongyuan's consciousness had almost sunk into darkness. Otherwise, according to his temperament, if he caught this sentence in the future, who knew how much land Jingwan had to give him, and how much compensation? The shadow guards outside almost couldn't help but rush in. But thinking that their master had just received a favor from the beauty, they reckoned that he wouldn't like them to appear. It would be better to wait. Jingwan kept wiping him. After nearly an hour, Li Hongyuan's body temperature finally dropped a little. Even though Jingwan exercised every day, her hands still felt weak. She sat paralyzed beside Li Hongyuan, looking at his peaceful sleeping face, lost in thought. After about a quarter of an hour, her empty brain started to operate again. First, she checked his temperature. It didn't rise anymore, which could be considered a good thing. Jingwan hugged her knees and sat at the side, starting to think about how to deal with the aftermath of this matter. As for losing her first kiss and being molested by him, she naturally wouldn't be like a native girl who sought death. She would just treat it as being bitten by a dog. Right now, she wasn't sure who would find them first. Would it be someone from her family? Would it be a monk from White Dragon Temple? Would it be Jin Qinhuang's people? If it was the former, she believed that they would be willing to help her cover up the matter. If it was a monk from the temple, as long as Great Master Liao Chen was really like the rumors, then there was no need to worry. The trouble was the latter. They obeyed Jin Qinhuang's orders, and could even be considered as Jin Qinhuang's private property. Everything was for the benefit of Jin Qinhuang. In their view, since she saw their master's body, then she was already their master's person. Although she was a junior of a court official, her background wasn't that strong. Then, even if she saved their master, letting her enter the Wangfu to serve their master was already a great reward. Not only would they erase the grace of saving their lives, they would also be grateful. This was a natural way of thinking, and there was only one person who could interfere with their way of thinking. Jingwan's gaze once again fell on Li Hongyuan. How will you treat me? He was a Wangya. What did he not have? Perhaps she could let him act, as if he didn't know who saved him? But if she refused like this, wouldn't he feel that he had lost face and fly into a rage out of humiliation? She could choose to leave early, but if Jin Qinhuang breathed his last, he would definitely investigate to the end. She didn't think that she wouldn't be found out. Maybe when the time came, she would be directly branded as the assassin of the prince. Then she would just wait for her whole family to be executed. Jingwan, who was lost in thought, naturally didn't know that she was completely looking for trouble. Whatever situation she thought of would not happen. The people outside had already thought of everything for her. Because the moonlight wasn't bright, almost nothing could be seen outside. Li Hongyuan's 4 shadow guards came closer after the night turned dark, so that if their master was in a critical situation, they could use the excuse that they just happened to find their location. These people were well trained, so Jingwan naturally couldn't discover them. It was just that the result of listening to this kind of corner was often embarrassing oneself. They had seen their master play around with other women. Without even touching the corner of his clothes, he could make those women fall head over heels for him. They had also seen how those women who tried to get close to him in private ended up in a miserable state. However, they had never seen him so domineeringly possessive of a woman. He didn't allow her to refuse or resist. He also had an unprecedented tenderness and unreserved pampering. As long as you obediently stay by my side, I can do anything you want. No one was clearer than them about the meaning of this sentence, because they hadn't seen any movement inside for a long time. And seeing that Miss Luo seemed to be somewhat drowsy, the few people finally couldn't help but order some sedative medicine, and Jingwan finally fell asleep. The few people hurried in to check on Li Hongyuan's situation, but before they could approach, the sleeping Li Hongyuan suddenly opened his eyes, sharpness and killing intent coexisting. The few people were frightened by his gaze. When they came in, they were very sure that their master was asleep, so the current situation could only mean one thing. The injured master was more alert than usual. Even if it was a sound that ordinary people couldn't detect, he could let him know. And then he reacted almost instinctively, forcing himself to wake up. Perhaps what made him react this way wasn't that he was afraid that someone would take the opportunity to harm him, but that he always remembered in his consciousness that there was another person who needed his protection by his side. The few people hurriedly knelt down on one knee to beg for forgiveness. Li Hongyuan didn't look at them. His eyes fell on Jingwan, who fell beside him. "Master, it's just a sedative medicine, not a knockout drug." And Jiu hurriedly explained in a low voice. This was the reason why they came in now, because they didn't dare to use knockout drugs. And sedative medicine didn't have much effect in a situation where people were more alert. Li Hongyuan didn't make a sound. After a moment, Anjiu came forward, because he only paid attention to him and didn't pay attention to Jingwan. Anjiu almost touched Jingwan, so he was kicked by Li Hongyuan. Fortunately, he didn't have much strength now, so Anjiu wasn't injured. The few people's eyes darkened. Perhaps it was because their master cared far more about an insignificant woman than they, the subordinates who risked their lives for him. So they felt it was unfair in their hearts. But after Miss Luo came to the capital in a short period of time, especially today's matter, they gradually realized that in their master's heart, Miss Luo might have already surpassed himself. So what other thoughts could they have? Anjiu came forward again, and naturally went around from the side. After checking Li Hongyuan's pulse, Anjiu found that Li Hongyuan's situation was better than he expected. He looked at the bandage, and wasn't sure if it was related to Miss Luo's previous treatment method. He was quite surprised when he saw it. Miss Luo even knew some things that they didn't know, so he was no longer surprised that she could take care of people so well. He looked at the knot of the bandage again. It didn't knot, so he gave up the idea of opening it to look at the wound. Li Hongyuan didn't refuse to eat the pills that Anjiu handed over, and then told them when they would come to pick him up. Quietly coming and quietly leaving. Then, a doubt emerged in their hearts. When Master was facing Miss Luo before, was he completely awake, or was he in a semi-conscious state? If it was the latter, they could reluctantly accept it. After all, it was the person he had been thinking about for so long. It was understandable that he couldn't control his emotions. But if it was the former, Even if it was their master, they couldn't help but say that it was too shameless. The shameless Jin Qinhuang would only be more shameless. He didn't know what was called the most shameless. Even if Jingwan fell asleep because of the sedative medicine, her sleep wasn't very peaceful. After hearing Li Hongyuan's movements, she sat up. She was annoyed at how she fell asleep, and hurriedly went to check on Li Hongyuan's situation. This time, she didn't feel hot, but felt cold instead. Jingwan turned around and poked at the fire, adding in some firewood. Then she prepared to move Li Hongyuan closer to the fire. But she forgot that this was a jackal who didn't forget to eat meat even when his life was in danger. So when she approached him, she was pulled over. And he even habitually grabbed her to his mouth and took 2 bites. Jingwan's face immediately darkened, hating herself for not having a long memory. But this time she learned to be obedient. As long as he didn't move his mouth, she would let him hold her and not struggle. Then she tried to use the previous method to appease him. Unfortunately this time, even if her mouth was dry from talking, a certain person didn't move. He just held her in his arms like he was protecting food. Jingwan finally gave up and gave up. She would just treat it as a natural heater. In any case, it was still cold at night. In this world, Jingwan had been sleeping by herself since she was born. Because she wasn't a real child, even the nanny who accompanied her to sleep was rejected by her. Suddenly being held in someone's arms, plus the pain in her body, she felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't do anything while being imprisoned in his arms. She might as well sleep peacefully. But even if she was sleepy and tired, it was still very difficult to fall asleep. Jingwan tried to ignore the hand on her waist as much as possible. She began to count sheep in her heart. She didn't know how long had passed before she finally fell asleep in a daze. Jingwan didn't know that after she fell asleep, Li Hongyuan actually opened his eyes. Right now he was really very awake. It had to be said that this was thanks to his strong physique and Njio's medicine. Everyone said that he didn't raise trash. Njio's medical skills were naturally very good. If he was released, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a miracle doctor. Li Hongyuan touched Jingwan's face and whispered, "Wan, you have to start getting used to me now. You can't wait until after we get married, and still not let me hug you." This laid the foundation for this smelly and shameless person to often attack at night. Just like the previous night, Li Hongyuan slept well in the following days. When it was time for Li Hongyuan and the shadow guards to agree on, this time, they made a noise outside. Naturally, they didn't want Jingwan to be embarrassed after coming in. At the moment of the noise, Jingwan basically woke up. When she was thinking about how to get rid of Li Hongyuan's arms, she didn't expect that when she gently turned over, Li Hongyuan's arm would let go. Although she was very surprised, Jingwan still quickly stood up. A moment later, a group of people led by an E walked in with torches. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652954. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is exempted. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 73. Does Miss know who we are? Ani clearly knew everything, but when he saw Jingwan, he still appropriately expressed surprise. Jingwan didn't answer him, and just glanced at Li Hongyuan. Her meaning couldn't be more obvious. Njio no longer hesitated, and quickly went forward to check Li Hongyuan's condition again. Fortunately, the medicine had taken effect, and he was gradually getting better. He nodded to the others and then nimbly untied the cloth strips on Li Hongyuan's body, applied medicine on him, and then used a brand new white cloth to bandage him. Compared to Jingwan alone, it was much easier for Njio to treat his wounds with help. After that, the two worked together and quickly helped him put on his clothes. It was obvious that it was his usual clothes, low-key and gorgeous. With just a simple tidying up, Li Hongyuan's sorry state was swept away. With his eyes closed, he was definitely a quiet and peaceful sleeping beautiful man. Annie saw that Li Hongyuan's side was neatly tidied up, and once again looked at Jingwan. We all know about what happened halfway up the mountain. It seems that Miss is the Luo family's third Mississippi. For Miss to be safe and sound, it is worthy of celebration. Jingwan nodded, indeed. After hesitating for a moment, she opened her mouth. May I ask, how are the others? Their lives are not in danger. Even so, it didn't mean that they were all right. However, it was good to be alive. Being alive represented hope. Many thanks. You don't deserve it. It should be us thanking Mississippi. If it wasn't for Miss, we don't know what would have happened to Master. If something happened to Master, we can't absolve ourselves from the blame, even if we die 10,000 times. It was just a coincidence that we ran into him. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't leave him in the lurch. Moreover, Jin Qinhuang is a noble descendant of the heavens. Naturally, the heavens help the worthy. Annie secretly said in his heart, there wouldn't be anyone else. If they happened to run into him, they would also be cleared out. Miss is too modest. Jingwan declined to comment and didn't want to be entangled in this matter anymore. Then it's still the same words as before. How are you going to deal with me? Not only Annie, but even the others were secretly complaining incessantly. They had already diverged, so why did they have to turn back to this question? Jingwan only thought that Li Hongyuan was still asleep, but they knew very well that their master was awake. How could they dispose of his sweetheart in front of their master? How many lives did they have? But the second time she asked, if he still avoided talking about it, it would inevitably arouse her suspicion. Annie glanced at his master, hoping to get a hint. Unfortunately, his master clearly planned to pretend to the end. Looking at the others, all of them were very busy, and none of them paid any attention to him. He secretly scolded them for having no sense of loyalty. However, he also knew that these guys did not want to offend their future mistress. What if she decided to settle accounts with them in the future? After pondering for a moment, he could only brace himself and ask, Miss, what are your thoughts? Do you want a status or something else? Can you handle this kind of small matter on behalf of your master? Jingwan interrupted him. Small matter? Great-aunt ancestor, your matter. Even if it's a sesame or mung bean, you still have to deal with it as a big matter. Moreover, this really is not a small matter. You don't have to look down on yourself. This one naturally cannot. But this one will report misintentions back to my master and let him decide. Jingwan thought that according to Jin Qinhuang's casual attitude towards women, it would be normal for his subordinates to casually deal with people. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan did not know Jingwan's thoughts. Otherwise he might be so angry that he would vomit blood. It was even more likely that he would ruthlessly retaliate against Jingwan. Then, please tell Wang Ye that Chena does not want anything. Treat it as if I have never seen Wang Ye, and have never saved Wang Ye. Naturally, you have never seen me. There was no intersection in the past, and there will be no intersection in the future. Great-aunt, I'm afraid that I can't let you do as you wish. Not only was there an intersection in the past, there will be an even greater entanglement in the future. This one will pass on Miss words as it is. Jingwan nodded. I will wait for Wang Ye's decision. If Wang Ye wants Miss to enter the Fu, what will Miss do? And he curiously asked, but after he asked, he faintly regretted it. He originally wanted to remedy the situation, but because he had been intentionally or unintentionally paying attention to his master, fearing that he had some instructions that he did not see, this time, he really bumped into his half-opened eyes. He did not need to think to know that his master also wanted to know the answer, so the words that had just slipped to his mouth were swallowed back down. You are too rude. Even if her family background was not prominent, but this was not something that a bodyguard could ask, even if this bodyguard served a member of the imperial family. And he was embarrassed. He was the one who sought death first, so even if he really died, he had to bite the bullet and seek death to the end. This one is only doing my duty. I thought that if my master asked, there would be an explanation. I did not mean to offend Mississippi asking Miss to forgive me. Jingwan smiled. Truly a loyal and good bodyguard. This question, wait until your master really wants me to enter Jin Wangfu. Then I will use my actions to tell you. Annie felt that although she was smiling, her eyes were really cold. Although he wasn't sober at that time, and didn't have a good taste of Wan's blood. When he was sober, he couldn't bear to hurt her. But now he didn't regret it. Compared to a long period of time when she had to hide it, and might be discovered by others, it was indeed more convenient to just erase it directly. Even if she didn't experience ups and downs, Wan was decisive and resolute in her bones. This kind of thing wouldn't cause harm to others, and she only needed to leave a scar as the price to put an end to many troublesome things. She didn't need to think about what she would do. As for this group of insensible people, the future mistress's neck should be looked at indiscriminately. She had to wash their eyes properly when they went back. Erasing the bite mark was a foregone conclusion. Li Hongyuan naturally couldn't let her do it by herself, so he secretly touched Jiao. And Jiao, who got the hint, was not surprised. He was the most suitable person to do this kind of thing. But every time his master thought of it in the future, he was afraid that he would remember it. He wouldn't remember that he was the one who gave the order now. And Jiao accepted it very calmly. I'll do it. I think I know a lot about external injuries. What do you think, Miss Luo? Jingwan nodded. It didn't matter who did it. It would definitely be better than her. And Jiao broke the branch and walked to Jingwan. Now she inexplicably felt that she was much more dazzling than before when she was in a coma. She didn't shrink back when she encountered difficulties. She faced difficulties head-on. She did things and spoke neatly without hesitation. She wasn't arrogant, but one could feel her pride. Everything she showed was far beyond the calmness and wisdom of her age. She was very similar to his master, who was mature many years ago. At this moment, Jiao seemed to suddenly understand a little of the reason why his master was so obsessed with her. Indeed, only such a woman was the most suitable for his master. Because when something happened, she would not only not be a hindrance, but could even preside over the overall situation when his master was not there. It needs to be realistic. The wound may be a little long, but it only needs to be covered up on the surface. After all, even a master of external injuries will not carefully check the wound on your neck. Jingwan frowned slightly. Make it deeper. I don't want to cover it up for a while, but for a lifetime. The fake surface wound is too shallow. After healing and removing the scab, the imprint inside is as clear as before. Then what I'm doing now is just suffering in vain. And Jiao was speechless. After looking carefully, he found that his master's bite was not ordinary ruthless. Even the best medicine to remove scars could not disappear. Probably he really wanted to accompany her for a lifetime. To completely cover it up, the scar left behind might be bigger. Did his master regret it? It will be very painful. If Miss Luo can't bear it, if I were you, it's already over. Don't you know that the more you hesitate, the greater the impact it will have on the other party? Jingwan said, tilting her neck and silently urging. And Jiao's hands inexplicably trembled. He didn't have this reaction when he was treating his master's wound. Jingwan smiled at him comfortingly, and even joked. Steady. Otherwise my life will really be lost in your hands. Sure enough, the more he said, the greater the impact on the other party. He really deeply felt it, and the feeling of being on the back. He could be sure that his master was staring at him. Great aunt, please don't laugh. Master's vinegar jar is about to overturn. Originally, he had already held a grudge against you for making a move. After it was over, he'd better ask to train for a period of time. If you're like this, perhaps it's better for me to do it myself? Jingwan still smiled. Swish swish, Jingwan felt an obvious pain, but her heart felt a lot more relaxed. In this place where women were extremely harsh, such a bite mark, not to mention an unmarried girl, even a married woman would attract gossip. Those who thought that they were noble and cultured, once they saw this kind of thing, would spit out the most vicious, cruel, and unkind words. Because they themselves were deeply bound, they couldn't tolerate anyone being different from them. In the eyes of others, Jingwan didn't even frown. She just covered it with her handkerchief. But then she thought of something and loosened it, letting the blood stain her collar. Not to mention that Li Hongyuan saw the blood on Jingwan's neck. His eyes became more and more dangerous. Even Jiao frowned in disapproval. Miss Luo. Jingwan didn't care and waved her hand. I fainted when I fell down. If there's no blood on my clothes, how can it be justified? I'll deal with it later. Master refused to treat the wound, and now she refused his advice. The purpose was to succeed in the disguise. On this point, the two seemed to have a tacit understanding. The difference was that Miss Luo was doing it for others, while Master was doing it for himself. Comparing the two, it seemed that Miss Luo was more open-minded and selfless, while Master was selfish and narrow-minded. And Gio handed her a bottle of medicine. It can make the wound stop bleeding and scab quickly, and it won't leave any traces of powder. Jingwan accepted it without hesitation. After all, it had been so long. There must be a difference in the wound. Thank you. Let's go. The people looking for Miss Luo should be arriving soon. And he reminded. Jingwan also nodded. Although there was a big difference between people who practice martial arts and those who didn't, in Jingwan's view, people who practice martial arts couldn't reach the level of mystical martial arts novels in her previous life. Relying on a pair of feet, they could travel 1,000 li a day and so on. It was absolutely a fantasy. If the time of their accident and the time of Jin Qinhuang's assassination wasn't too long, then the people looking for her shouldn't be too far away. When they were preparing to leave, Anjio suddenly opened his mouth and asked, Miss hasn't seen us before, yet you're so assured to hand Wang Ye over to us. After all, according to common sense, the people looking for Wang Ye wouldn't be just a group of people. It could also be those assassins, right? Jingwan looked at him with surprise. Allow me to be impolite, but are you saying that I'm stupid, or are you saying that you're stupid? If it was an assassin who broke in and saw the sleeping Jin Qinhuang, plus an unarmed and weak woman, their first reaction would only be to rush forward and kill to silence. Would they still have the leisure to talk so much with me? Moreover, I also don't know where the assassin came from, to be so daring. After they might have already succeeded, they still pursued a Qinhuang relentlessly, insisting on confirming his life and death? You guys took so long to find us. Presumably Jin Qinhuang also fell from the mountain into the river. Those assassins have either been executed or have already escaped. If there are still so many of you chasing after us, then how incompetent are the people around Jin Qinhuang? Facing Jingwan's scrutinizing gaze, Anjio really felt that he was stupid to the extreme. He should have long understood that she was different from the average woman in the boudoir. It was impossible for her to not be able to see through the crux of the matter, and it was even more impossible for her to lose her ability to think because of fear. Wasn't her performance perfect from beginning to end? He delivered himself to her door to be slapped in the face, and Gio instructed her to quickly treat the wound on her neck, before he somewhat awkwardly went to help his master up. After that, Jingwan watched them leave, and very quickly disappeared into the darkness. She turned around and began to clean the wound. After confirming that Jingwan couldn't see, Li Hongyuan pushed away and Anjio who were supporting him. His posture was ramrod straight, where was the half-dead look. It was just a typical case of throwing away after using, taking it for granted, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. And stay behind. Yes. How could he really just leave? At the very least, he had to wait until she was picked up by Quan Su and Quan Wei. The people following him were somewhat perturbed, not knowing what he thought of the previous matters. They waited for a long time without seeing his anger, so they could only quietly follow him. The matter that I asked you to investigate, what is the result? Being asked about serious matters, naturally they didn't dare to neglect. Miss Luo came to Bailong Temple in advance. The people left and Luo Fu sent a pigeon, but we didn't receive any news. It has been confirmed that the pigeon is missing, but that letter didn't have any special content. It was covered up as usual, so there shouldn't be any problem. The matter of a wild beast crashing into Elder Ruan's youngest daughter's carriage was an accident. You must find out the whereabouts of the pigeon. Even if it was eaten, you must find the bones for Ben Wang. Carefully investigate everyone around Ruan Fangfei, including herself. Yes, Master didn't allow any accidents to happen to Miss Luo, so it was understandable. Even if the bones of the pigeon were eaten by a dog, it would be dug out. Since it was suspected that Ruan Fangfei set up a trap herself, then it must be investigated again and again. It didn't matter if she courted death, but if she implicated Miss Luo, then it must not happen. Why did Wan Wan and the others come in advance? Sun Gongzi suggested Miss Sun, because he said that he would be very busy in 2 days. He hoped to take advantage of these 2 days to see the flourishing peach blossoms of Bailong Temple. Miss Sun and Miss Luo talked about it, and Miss Luo agreed, so there was the following matter. Why did Sun Yilin become busy? Wasn't it because Li Hongyuan didn't want him to have time to contact Jingwan? He just didn't want him to be unwilling to let go of these 1 or 2 days of free time. He had to deliberately get closer to Jingwan. After the carriage fell off the cliff, did he regret it? It seems that this prince was too kind to him. The coldness in Li Hongyuan's words made the people around him shiver. Speaking of regret, Li Hongyuan also had a little. In his previous life, Wan Wan didn't suffer such a crime. Everything changed because of his actions. However, he was never a person who regretted, and he wouldn't stop changing the things he wanted to change because of this accident. He would only think about how to protect Jingwan more carefully. What's going on with Fu Yenting? Heir Wuanho brought his wife to Bailong Temple to burn incense and return a vow. When they were leaving the city, they met Miss Luo and the others. After knowing each other's purpose, they went together. This prince had someone act as a matchmaker for him, and also gave him money. Because he was allowed to take a leave of absence for the wedding, he really enjoyed it. He sighed silently. Heir Fu was on his own. Master, there's one more thing. Nanny Gong said that after Miss Luo fell off the cliff, Heir Wuanho helped Miss Luo and saved her from the danger of losing her life. Aside from the fact that he had to report all the big and small things related to Miss Luo, his original intention was that his master would treat Heir Fu better on account of him saving Miss Luo, but he didn't expect that. Hearing this, Li Hongyuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. Originally, he didn't reveal much of his emotions, but in an instant, the sinister murderous intent almost solidified. Fu Yenting, perhaps this prince should directly chop you up and feed you to the dogs, so as to completely eliminate all future troubles. The shadow guards couldn't help but retreat in horror. They felt that if Heir Fu was in front of their master would really do as he said. This reaction was completely wrong. If they still couldn't guess that there was some kind of relationship between Heir Fu and Miss Luo, they could go and knock their heads against a wall. According to their master's extreme possessiveness towards Miss Luo, if any other man got close to her, he would definitely get jealous and keep them far away, secretly causing a lot of trouble for them. However, even Chen Jungmin, who was about to become Miss Luo's fiancé, didn't cause their master to have such a strong reaction. Since it was Fu Yenting who stepped on their master's sore spot, then no matter what kind of abyss of suffering he had in the future, they wouldn't dare to sympathize with him anymore. When Nanny Gong specially mentioned this matter, it wasn't that she didn't want to repay Li Hongyuan a little, because she couldn't tolerate his actions anymore. However, she probably didn't expect that she would directly stab Li Hongyuan's Achilles heel, causing Fu Yenting to almost lose his life. The most wrong person was none other than Fu Yenting. He didn't know anything. Even on the road from the entrance of the capital to Bailong Temple, he didn't meet Jingwan face to face. His new wife was talking to old Madame Luo at the back, while he, Sun Yilin, and Luo Jingbo were riding in front. He just happened to be in the position closest to the cliff. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652955. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website m.bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.